Supervisors meeting. Ms. Steele, would you call the roll?
Dr. Orth?
Here.
Dr. Leming?
Yes.
Mr. Hutson?
Here.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Here.
Mr. Nicosia?
Here.
Ms. Hanson?
Here.
Mr. Bonniville?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. All that are able, would you please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance given by the Honorable Christopher Hutson, Gloucester Point Supervisor.
Heavenly Father, we gather here tonight to conduct the business of the county. Let us all be good stewards for the county, for the citizens, for the resources, and all that this beautiful county has to offer the citizens and visitors. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Approval of the minutes for the October 7th, October 21st, and the November 5th meeting.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Next, we have the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes?
So moved.
Seeing none, we have a motion. Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Next, we have matters presented by the board. Is there anything that the board members would like to bring up at this time? I have a few for discussion later from the email. We will bring those up at that point. Okay, perfect. We can do that then.
I didn't think they were perfected yet for a motion.
No, that's fine. So we will handle those in our discussion and give some direction. We will move on to county administrator items. Ms. Steele.
Yes, thank you. I was cheating, looking on my phone to get the date correct because I wanted to get the date of the work session, which is February 17th. And the board had decided at the last meeting to make that a retreat focusing on the budget. So it was suggested that we ask you all if, because it's going to be maybe a little bit more in-depth meeting, if you would like to start any earlier in the evening of that day. So you don't have to decide right now. It could be something that you could bring up at the next meeting. We would obviously have to modify this calendar if you do that. But it just might help so that we're not here too late if there's a number of items to discuss.
Okay.
So something to think about. And then I have some fantastic news. The elevator in Building 2 is working again. So please come back. Thank you.
Tony will be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll ride up and down.
Okay. Next up, we have citizen or public comment period. Oh, yes.
So not to ask the rest of the question, but it's functioning and inspected and passed the inspections.
Yes, they had an inspection pass that was a sort of a tentative thing because of an alarm, but they were allowed to operate, and everything is being finalized tomorrow, but it can still be used. Thank you.
So next up, we'll have the public comment period. Speakers, when you come, please state your name, magisterial district, and we will give everybody 3 minutes this evening. And I do know we have a recorded or a email comment as well.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board, and county staff. Bruce Souls, Ware District, President, Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue. We have been trying to work with the county since 2018, especially focused on financing efforts since last spring. We were locked in for a USDA loan at 2 1/8% when we had a roadblock. We were assured funding with the referendum. When that failed, the county had the borrowing power to fund the new station without raising taxes. Roadblocked again. Very little progress until we met with the EDA. Initially thought was a simple 501c3 private activity tax exempt bond to be issued and a commitment from the Board of Supervisors of a support agreement for payment with no tax increase. Why is this so complicated? No more roadblocks. We are volunteers trying to accomplish our mission as first responders. We have $3 million invested so far. Let's get this finished so we can start building. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, Ms. Steele and county staff. I'm J.D. Clements. I'm in the Abingdon Magisterial District. I'm Chief of Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue. Back in 2008, when I became chief, I came before the board at that time and stressed the need for a new fire station. And that process has been moved on to every subsequent board since. And finally, in 2024, in August, down at T.C. Walker, the board at that time voted to fully fund a new station. Jumping back a little bit, 3 or 4 months ago, y'all had a closed session discussing the fire department. I stood outside for over an hour in darkness waiting for y'all to come back in session, or the board at that time come back in session. Came back inside, and nobody wanted to tell me anything what was discussed. Can you believe how frustrating it is to me as fire chief telling you what a need that we had, and the board being so non-transparent that you couldn't share any information with whatsoever? We have been fully transparent with this board, subsequent boards, and will continue to do so. But I'm beginning to wonder if we made a mistake by telling you we would give you our fire station and the other adjoining properties we own. We worked hard to get all those properties and improve them. And now, this board, I feel like that there's somebody in the county that doesn't want this to happen. I may be wrong, and I hope I am wrong. But somebody is dragging the link. I realize the gentleman's here tonight from Davenport to talk about financing. But please, wake up and help us move forward. We got a new rescue truck that should be here in March. We don't know if we can get in the building, because when we ordered it, we're expecting to be in a new building. So if it don't fit, it's on you. Thank you. Good night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ms. Steele, Mr. Wilmot. This is my folder of county documents to do with the fire department and what y'all have done in the last 3 years. This is my personal stuff. Everything in this folder is one of your documents, and I'm going to be referencing that in my speech tonight. I better pick up my glasses because I'm getting old and I can't see. Good evening again, Mr. Chairman. I spoke to you on August the 6th, 2024. And at that meeting, I spoke to you about the various documents, this one, your documents, your financial reports from Davenport. Oh, wait a minute. This is the speech I gave on August the 6th. Same speech, same conversation. A year and a half later, we're having it. Who's responsible for this? My understanding is, let me finish. I said that in November 23, there was a referendum placed on the ballot. 57% of the voters in Gloucester County voted it down because, Ms. Steele, according to you, and I quote from a document, October the 4th, 2023, you advised the county did not have $11 million currently available for the fire station. However, you clarified that the county would have the capacity to borrow those funds without a tax increase the fall of next year. That was 24. That's been over a year and a half ago, folks. And someone spoke earlier. You voted unanimously, minus a couple of people, in August to move forward. Why haven't you done it? Why are we here tonight to hear Davenport, excuse me, Mr. Cole, I think it is. I don't want to hear from him again. Why should I, as a taxpayer, be sitting on the sideline listening to somebody not telling me the truth? You told the citizens that we could build this fire department without a tax increase. Why are we now hearing again from Davenport, what is it now? Possibility of $39 million? Tax increase is coming, but the referendum was 2% or 2 cents, borrowing $39 million. I'm of the personal opinion, and this is Teresa Altimus's personal opinion, you use the fire department as a scapegoat. You put them out front, you led the people to believe that if you didn't pass this referendum, these people weren't going to get a fire department. What happened to working with the men and women who volunteered countless hours, day after day, holidays after holidays, to protect you, to protect me? I think you're doing a big disservice to them. I know my time, I see my time is, I got 21 seconds. But here's the documentation where you said you'd move forward. If you'd have moved forward, these men and women would have a place to store their apparatus. They'd be able to walk through the door. If this county ever has to go to a fully paid fire and rescue, you're talking on the minimum $20 to $30 million a year. You are not doing what you said you would do. Whose fault is that? We are owed an answer. The citizens in this county are owed an answer. I'm owed an answer as a taxpayer for you to have a conversation tonight as to why you're dragging your heels. The way you're going, they might as well wait another 2 years and send this back to a referendum so that at least they can borrow money cheaper than ever before. And if you do that, you got a lot of people to answer to. Thank you. Excuse me.
Any other members of the public wishing to come forward? Seeing none, Ms. Cronin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had one comment submitted from Kenny Hogg, Gloucester Point District. Greetings. Once again, the current administration is proposing to saddle the taxpaying residents of Gloucester with financing parks, recreation, and tourism expenditures. As we all know, PR&T already requires us to pay over $2 million above what they take in yearly. That expenditure is primarily paid for by Gloucester taxpayers. Now the current administration is proposing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on hanging flags and banners on the Coleman Bridge, along with other excessive so-called aesthetic improvements at Gloucester Point. Not $1 will be made from any of it, but all of it will certainly come with substantial upkeep, maintenance, and replacement costs every year. These costs will also be paid for mostly by the taxpayers of Gloucester. Just exactly what will Gloucester taxpayers get out of such ludicrous expenditures of tax dollars? Certainly not a reduction in real estate or other local taxes already levied against us. When we step into reality, we understand there are more pressing issues in Gloucester that need financial attention, like our neglected public water and sewer systems and the department responsible for them, like investing in the growth of those systems and in the department, which will in turn facilitate economic growth along with steering the utilities department toward financial self-sustainment. How many will step into reality, and how many will continue to facilitate the pipe dream notion that parks, recreation, and tourism will evolve into an economic driver for Gloucester County? Respectfully, Kenny Hogg. Those are the only comments submitted, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cronin. We will now move to our work session agenda. The first item tonight will be the Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue Financing Update from Ms. Maria Calloway, Deputy County Administrator, and Mr. Ted Cole, Senior Vice President, Davenport Company.
Good evening. I am simply here to introduce Mr. Cole. We do want to let you know that he's going to provide you with an update on the financing. This is current interest rates to the best of Davenport's knowledge, and some of those schedules that he's going to walk through. We have something, I believe, to display. And then you each have been provided with a bound copy at your places as well. Mr. Ted Cole.
Thank you. Good evening. I've presented to some of you before, some new faces. As Maria said, we have helped the county over the years, primarily on capital projects, capital planning, and then when there's a decision to move forward, some sort of capital funding or debt issuance. In tonight's discussion, we're not looking for any action. We're sharing information, happy to answer questions, and hopefully generate some discussion. We're going to focus specifically on the fire station project financing. There are pages in the bottom right corner of this book. What's in the book is exactly what's on the screen. So if we could go to the next slide. This is just sort of setting the table on the assumptions about the project. And if you look at those tables at the top, particularly on the left-hand side, thank you, under the uses of funds, this is the current working assumption for the cost of the project. As I understand it, the project is still in some process of design, and expected maybe currently that you might have project bids this summer, maybe in July, but I'm not sure there's a firm schedule on that yet. Our assumption has been that you would want to borrow money when you know the project costs rather than borrowing the money based on an estimate. So you're going to see when we get into the details a summer financing that is specific to try to line up with when the project will be bid. The current working estimate for the project cost is at $17.5. An additional project contingency of 8%, which is $1.4 million. Pretty healthy cost of issuance assumption. Healthy meaning I would hope maybe we can come in lower than that, but there's been quite a bit of work put into this of $750. So what we're solving for is to deliver at the closing of the loan $19,650,000. Ultimately, as part of the financing process, there would be a public hearing, and within that public hearing, there would be a not to exceed loan amount. We had discussed preliminarily with staff that that might just be around $20 million. But we're only going to borrow, if we borrow, what we need, presumably supported by the project bids whenever those come in. So that's the working assumption. That is information provided by the volunteer fire and rescue county staff. So $19,650,000 inclusive of issuance costs. Couple of things to note in that footnote on the right. Under this type of debt that we're talking about, there may be a limitation on how much of the issuance costs can be funded through the debt. Normally, if there's a cost of issuance associated with a loan, you roll that into the loan, and that's amortized. You would do that here, but there could be a limitation, which means in terms of how much of that, 2% limit of the loan amount. So there's a possibility that some of the cost of issuance would have to be paid from cash, and that's still being discussed and fine-tuned. And then importantly, the note in boldface, we have been working with an assumption that there's $1 million contribution from the volunteer fire and rescue. For the time being, we have not treated that as a cash contribution to the project costs, but rather you're going to see it as a cash use on the repayment of the debt over the first 1 or 2 years. There are two ways to handle that $1 million. Put it towards the project and borrow $1 million less, or borrow for the full project and use that $1 million to help fund debt service during construction. We have, for now, assumed the second of those, not putting it towards the project, using it to help support the debt service during construction. Okay? We're going to be talking about two funding approaches. A direct bank loan, where we go out and solicit proposals from banks, and if we move in that direction, we would have a loan with one lending institution, one bank. Or a public issuance of municipal bonds, which are securities, through a broker-dealer underwriter. This happens all the time. And primarily of note is that would require the county, or the obligor, in this case the county, the ultimate person or entity that's repaying the debt, to get a bond rating. Gloucester County does not have a bond rating, not because it's not creditworthy, just haven't needed to establish one. If we go the public sale route, we would need to do that, and I'll talk a little more about that in a moment. So those are our two options, direct bank loan or a public issuance of debt. Either way, we're looking to fund the $19,650,000 that we're estimating now over a long-term amortizing principal and interest basis. We've looked at 20 years, 25 years, and 30-year terms. Some of you may be familiar with a state program called the Virginia Resources Authority. They do pooled financings for local governments for lots of different projects, basically everything except schools. They are not an option for this project at this time because it was part of a failed referendum. The Virginia Resources Authority would have indicated that it would not be an option for them any earlier than the spring of '27. So for the time being, we have not assumed participation in that VRA program. So again, bank loan or a public issuance of debt. And at the very bottom is sort of a key bullet here, and that is there are a number of ways that this debt could be structured. And when I mean structured, we get into who's the borrower, who's the obligor, where's the final payment, where's the money coming from to pay the annual debt. There's been conversations going on about that. But what is important from our perspective is no matter how we structure this loan or this bond, that one, there be a very clear and identifiable commitment from the County Board of Supervisors to make the annual payment on the debt, which would be subject to appropriation. You'd have to put it in each year's budget, what sometimes is referred to as a moral obligation. Lenders need to know who is ultimately on the hook, if you will, to make the annual payment. That's one. And then secondly, there needs to be a very clear link for the lender or the investor that if that payment isn't made by the county board, that the lender or the bondholder has a means to exercise their rights in the collateral, which is the fire station. Their ability to take control of that fire station if a payment is not made. Those are two very important parts of the financing structure that will ultimately be put together for this, again, in our opinion, because that's going to ensure that, banks have interest. They know where the payment's coming from. They know what action they can take if the payments aren't made. And in the public markets, that we secure as high a bond rating as possible. Higher bond rating correlates to lower rates and lower debt service. Any questions on that? All right, next slide, page 3. This gives you a real high-level pros, cons overview of a bank loan and a public issuance. You can ignore VRA at the bottom for now because it's really not in play right now. The key takeaway with the direct bank loan, it is a more streamlined process, less documentation, less parties at the table in terms of consultants. Prepayment terms and conditions could be a little more flexible. Each bank looks at that a little differently. Some might say you can begin prepayment, early payment after 5 years. Some might say 10 years. It's going to be a mixed bag. The interest rate for the bank loan is often established on the front end of the process so that you know your rate and you're starting to do all of the transaction work without having to float with the market. On the disadvantage side, typically limited on a fixed rate basis to 15 or 20 years. Maybe there's a 25-year fixed rate out there from a bank, TBD on that. And rates are typically a little higher than what we see go into the public market. So there's pros and cons. With the public issuance, more moving parts, more documentation, generally speaking, a higher issuance cost. We would need to establish a bond rating. The interest rate is typically not locked into the tail end of the process. So there's a lot of activity going on to get to the place where you can lock the rate. And with the public issuance, that's on the tail end. However, on the flip side, normally, often, regularly going 25 and 30 years for fixed rates. And those rates, even though there's a higher cost to get that transaction done, are more favorable than the bond market, which means all things being equal, for a 25-year loan, for example, the public issuance, while it takes longer and there's more cost of issuance, it's not unusual to see lower annual payments. Okay? All right, next slide, 4. This is a real simple comparison, bank loan versus public issuance. Talk a little bit about the timeline, 45 to 60 days versus 75 to 90. Maximum term for banks, typically up to 20, fixed rate. Maybe there's a 25-year term out there that a bank would be willing. You wouldn't know that definitively unless we did an RFP. We would propose, if we go that route, to do a competitive process, soliciting proposals. Public issuance regularly goes fixed rate 30 years. Talk a little bit about when is the interest rate locked on the front end with the bank loan versus on the back end with the public issuance. Rating is only required for a public issuance. An offering document, which is a pretty lengthy document that needs to be prepared, is only required for the public issuance. The documentation of a bank loan is much more simple. What are your obligations on line 12 going forward? What we call continuing disclosure. So when you go into this loan, what kind of information do you have to provide to the lender or the market? With a bank loan, it's typically just your audits and budgets. It's pretty simple. If you go into the public market, it's the audits, the budgets, and then what's called any material events that have to go to a very specific website that's available to the public. So it's not a terribly difficult task, but there's a little bit more that has to be managed annually on the public issuance. And then you can see, generally speaking, the types of professionals that would be involved in one versus the other. Okay? So I think this is probably the most interesting page on page 5. You'll need to look at your book and put your glasses on if you wear them. What we've done here, and it's very important, particularly for some of you that are new, the existing debt that's in place for the county, and forget about utilities. It's a totally different topic. Utilities has debt outstanding that's serviced by water and sewer rates. This is just what we call tax-supported debt. When the additional sales tax was voted and approved, there were certain projects that were debt funded that were eligible for repayment from the new sales tax. Those are not running through this model. That is a separate payment of debt that is dedicated to be repaid from the new sales tax. What we're capturing here is any debt that's in place, county or schools, that is not eligible to be repaid by that new sales tax. So when you see we talk about existing county and ineligible school debt service, that is talking about any debt that's not eligible to be repaid from that new sales tax. Okay? And you can see in that graph in the upper left, the debt that is in place that we're dealing with is generally declining over time. The annual payment is coming down, which is a good thing, right? That's giving us a running start at bringing on new debt and minimizing the impact on the budget. The annual payment is, $3.5 million for the next couple of years, and then you see it start to step down. What we've now measured on the right-hand side is, as Maria said at the beginning, based on our estimates of the current market, and we feel very good about these. Keep in mind, markets move every day, some days a little bit, some days a lot. The bank lending rates don't always move in lockstep with the public bond issue. And what you've got in front of you are current estimates. They're actually estimates as of mid-December. Rates today are maybe a little bit lower than what we've got in here. We've seen some downward movement in rates. Today we saw a little bit of an upward movement in rates with what's going on with some of the newer tariff discussions and some unsettledness in the market. But they're very good estimates for where we are. All of these are assumed that we close in May or June. That might slide to July or August, depending on when project bids come in. I mean, you all might make a decision, we're willing to borrow based on an estimate, but then what do you do if the estimate comes in higher or lower? So it may be that this financing schedule needs to move based on when the bids are coming in. But think of it as a summer 2026 borrowing. Column B looks at a direct bank loan, and you'll notice we're closing in May. We're making our first interest payment on 12/1/26. We're making our first principal payment 6/1/27. So payments start in fiscal 27. That's the budget you all are about to go into. Final maturity 6/1/46. The bank rate is on line 8 of 4.45%. That's an estimate. If we did a bank RFP today and we got 5 banks to propose for 20 years, there might be somebody that comes in at 4, somebody that comes in at 5.5, and 3 people in between. It can be a very wide range. But we spoke with a bank who is a regular bidder of local government debt, active in Virginia. This is a rate indication of a 4.45. When you roll in the issuance costs, line 9 kicks that interest rate to a 4.72. And you'll notice what we're borrowing, the face amount of the bonds is about $19.35 million. That's giving you the $18.9 million for the project. I talked about that at the beginning, right? That's for the 17.5 and the 8% contingency. For a bank loan, we have a little lower cost of issuance. So 19.35, and you can see your payments are about $1,476,000 a year based on current rates. $1,476,000 for 20 years. Total payback at the bottom, $29.5 million. And then columns C, D, and E, we're funding the same project. We have a little more cost of issuance in the public sale because there's more things to be done, but it's the same $18.9 million, the 17.5 plus the contingency. And with the public sale, we've looked at 20, 25, and 30. You'll see the rates are lower, like I mentioned earlier. Cost of issuance are higher by, almost $300,000, but the rates are lower. And you'll notice on the 20-year public issuance, column C, the payment's about $1,410,000, right? So we're saving $65,000 a year compared to the bank, again, based on our estimates. You go 25-year, annual payment drops to $1,260,000, but we're adding 5 years of extra interest. Total payback is higher. The longest term we looked at, column E, is 30 years. Call it $1,170,000 a year. Total payback is right at about $35 million. So this is the scenario for a structure of the debt where we go 20, 25, or 30 years, and as it says in the header, we're making our first principal payment in fiscal 27, okay? We looked at something slightly different on the next slide, which is exactly like the slide I just covered. The only difference is we make our first principal payment in fiscal 28, 1 year later. We're still borrowing in the summer of 26, but we're doing interest only during construction. Same final maturity as the prior page. And you'll notice the big difference is what do you have to pay in fiscal 27? It's about $800,000 because it's only interest versus the prior page, it was upwards of $1 million plus. So it's just taking advantage of doing 1 year later, starting your principal payment. It's a pretty common approach. It saves you some money in fiscal 27, but it costs you a little money in the long run because you're not amortizing the principal quite as quickly. But the comparison generally is holding true when you look at the bank loan versus the public issuance. So that's the universe of debt that we've assumed. Page 7 is going to give you perspective on what does that mean to our budgets. And remember, under our current schedule, the budgeted debt service will not start until fiscal 27. So you'll be dealing with that in the budget that you all will be working on here shortly. So look at the top half of the page in greenish color. That is the scenario where we start the principal payment in 27. The bottom half of the page in blue is where we start the principal payment in 28. That's the only difference, green versus blue. And what we're doing for you here is trying to show what additional dollars are needed and in what years to repay this debt on top of all the other debt that you're paying for from the non-sales tax revenue. So let's look at the direct bank loan, the 20-year. I'm looking at column B as in boy. That 20-year, the total payback is $29.5 million. And there is a detailed set of analyses for every one of these scenarios in the appendix. In addition to the revenues you're already dedicating to your debt, aside from the new sales tax, you would need to come up in fiscal 27, 28, and 29 with those dollars, 464, 784, 406, all in, that's about $1.6 million over 3 years that would need to be supplementing your debt budget as it exists in fiscal 26. So that's one way to measure the affordability. You would have to come up with those dollars to support the debt under that scenario. And that's line 8. Go across, as we go over to the 30-year option, you would still need to provide some dollars, but it's, almost cut in half, about $700,000 over 3 years. Not each year, but the total over 3 years. Alternatively, rather than measuring it in dollars, beginning on line, we've said, well, what does that mean to how many pennies on the tax rate would it require to generate those dollars? So when you're looking at line 9, 10, 11, and 12, for the 20-year bank loan, it would be the equivalent of about 1.3 pennies on the tax rate. Go over to column E on the 30-year loan, it'd be less than a penny, about 0.8 pennies. And then line 13 is the last way we measure it. What if you put the revenue in place beginning in FY 27, all at once? What's the equivalent impact on the pennies? How many pennies of revenue would you need? For the 20-year bank loan, you'd need basically a penny. For the 30-year public issuance, you'd need about a half a penny. So there's just 3 ways we're measuring the affordability of the same debt. How many dollars do you need to supplement your budget by? How many pennies over fiscal 27 or 28? Or thirdly, what if you did it all at once and you built it into your 27 budget? So we're, worst case on the green section, we're about 1.4 pennies worth of revenue needed between fiscal 27 and 28, or equates to about $1.6 million. In the blue section, same setup, but remember we delayed the principal by 1 year, and you'll notice while the total payment on the debt is up a little bit, right? Because you're not amortizing the debt quite as quickly, the impacts are generally lower because you have a nice decline in your existing debt, and by waiting to make the principal payment 1 extra year, you get to take advantage of that decline. And as a result, the impacts associated with this, are less. We get down to even, a quarter of a penny way in the bottom right corner. That would be if you did the 30-year loan. So you will all look at that and say, well, that's affordable, really affordable, that's great news. It's not affordable. I mean, that's a subjective question, right? What's affordable? Because keep in mind, you're dealing with an operating budget as well, right? We know that. This is just what it takes to fund this fire station project using those estimated costs, nothing else. I know that's a lot. Happy to answer questions on that. I have one more slide to cover on schedule, but before we do that, maybe stop and see if there's any questions.
Any questions? Dr. Orth.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned something about the cost of getting a bond rating if we go with those county public issuance. How much does that cost?
It's done based on the size of the loan amount, and you would oftentimes consider going to 2 different rating agencies, I would say in this 15, 20 million, you might be talking about $30,000 one time per rating agency. So if you go to 2, it's 60,000. 1, it's 30,000.
Okay, the other question, since we are not able to use the VPA this year, could we in subsequent years apply to VPA to offset or to redo the loan?
Yeah, through the VRA program.
Okay, so that's a possibility.
Just let me just couple caveats on that. The VRA program, again, that's one of the state pools that is available to local governments for most any project except schools, because there's a sister program for schools. With VRA, they have a pool 3 times a year, usually spring, summer, fall. They are getting ready to accept applications for their spring of 26 pool. So just as an aside, what they're requiring people is to have their audit available for FY25, the year ended June 30, 25, in order to be considered for their spring pool. So you would have to make an application. They have already told us for this project, don't make an application before the spring of 27 pool. Making the application is non-binding. They go through their credit work, their due diligence. They'll want, at that point, the FY26 audit, and then they'll be looking at other things associated with the project and whatnot. So there, if you wanted to take advantage of VRA, one, you could wait till the spring of 27, right? Could they tell us today that they could absolutely fund this program? I don't think they would tell you that today because they don't have a new audit, and there's other things that they'll want to be able to take into consideration in real time. If we close the loan under one of the scenarios I talked about this coming summer, your ability to take advantage of VRA in the future may be there, but it will depend on what the prepayment language is for the loan we put in place this summer.
Mr. Hutson.
With any of the county issuance, what additional staff time would be required quantitatively?
Hard to quantify in hours, but it's not insignificant. A bank financing will be half of what it would take from a public issuance, because with the public issuance, we need to work closely with staff on the ratings and putting that offering document together. So, gosh, I'm hard pressed to tell you how many hours it would be, but it's not insignificant, and this would be happening in parallel path with a budget.
Would it be equivalent to a full-time employee, half-time?
Maybe for that 3 or 4 month period, yeah, half a person at least.
Okay. So I was just looking at the $65,000 savings. If you keep the 20 years equal, you're only saving $65,000. Would staff time cost that much?
Yeah, the $1,477,000 versus $1,411,000, right? So 60,000 a year or so.
But that would just be the first year or every year?
That would be every year. If you want to go back to page number 5, I'll tell you when you get there. One more. Yeah, you're there. The 20-year bank loan is $1,477,000 a year. The 20-year public sales $1,412,000 a year. So it's every year. The difference in total over the 20 years is 28.2 to 29.5. We're talking about $1,000,003.
But the staff time with reporting and everything else,
That's the real use of staff time would be during the financing. So call it, if we do it on this schedule, February, March, April, May. The annual reporting it's pretty streamlined. I mean, it's a couple days a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Hanson.
So when you were talking about the VRA and the language that we need to be used for the loan if we decide to do this, right, going forward, you said that it would be important for the language, for them to even look at that for us. What would that pertain to ownership? Like, is there some kind of caveat that they would look at or not look at?
Sure. So I think when I was mentioning that is if we were going to want to consider taking advantage of VRA next spring. That's the earliest they said they'd like to consider this project. But we put a borrowing in place this summer, right? Because everybody says, hey, I'm hypothetical. We need the money this summer. And what's our ability, maybe, if it makes economic sense, to take advantage of VRA next spring? Well, the language that's important is what is the ability to prepay the loan we put in place this summer? Can we prepay it in 8 months? That will be the language that's important. That's what I was referring to there. But with VRA, the language of how this transaction is structured between ownership and support agreements, they will care about that very much.
In what regards, and what would that look like?
I don't know that there's only one way that language could be documented, but go back to one of my first slides, a very clear linkage to the County Board of Supervisors repaying the debt annually. And with VRA, this is unique to VRA, if any board in the future chose not to appropriate the payment for that debt, VRA has the ability to intercept any of your state funding. So for schools, for health and human service, social services, right? That's unique to VRA. No bank can do that. So VRA has really a very strong position, but they're still going to they don't lend on everything just saying, hey, we can do state aid intercept, because they never want to do that, right? That would be a really bad situation. But with VRA, that is a real thing, is if the payment is missed or not appropriated, not put in the budget, VRA has the ability to intercept any of your state funding to make sure the payment is made. But they're going to want to make sure there's a very clear linkage in the way that loan is structured, that the County Board of Supervisors is, quote unquote, on the hook to make the payment, and that there is the ability to remedy a non-payment, not necessarily by the state aid intercept, but by taking control of the facility. And, I know there's been conversations about how you document those things and who's the owner and who's the obligors. There are agreements, side agreements. There may be more than one way to do that would satisfy VRA, but that is yet to really be discussed with them, because it's not an option currently.
Mr. Bonniville.
Are rates comparable with VRA as they are with the direct loan and the other processes?
Yeah, we looked at that. They are pretty comparable. VRA might be a tad better, because VRA is rated off of the Commonwealth of Virginia's AAA. So VRA has a very high credit rating, and when you go through their program, they're leveraging, a AAA rating of the Commonwealth. Your bonds would not be AAA. We've assumed your bonds would be single A. Maybe they're AA. That we wouldn't know that definitively till we go through the rating process. So when we looked at it, we were comparing the VRA AAA to a single A Gloucester County. Now keep in mind, VRA also has an annual fee that they build into the payment. So there's not only a payment based on the interest rate, but there's also an annual fee that they have, which is kind of the trade-off for getting the AAA. VRA is a little bit better. It's not, it varies whether you're looking at a 20, 25, or 30 year. They're comparable, VRA a tad better, but remember, right now with VRA, we don't have the ability to consider locking a rate through them until May of '27.
Dr. Leming.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Cole, I think you did a pretty good job tonight. It's a complicated conversation, but I appreciate your presentation. Is it true that, or is it not true that direct bank loans, if you're talking about a sequential refunding, and I think that's essentially what Dr. Orth was kind of talking about, was a sequential process where you sort of get an initial loan and then you refinance or restructure that loan subsequently. Is that correct? Correct. My own personal experience is that those banks usually require a minimum of 5 to 10 years. And I suspect the prepayment penalty would be a big number to do it in a year or 2 years.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm gonna just, you didn't ask about the public sale, but I'm gonna mention it. That public sale, it is very standard. Remember, we can go 20, 25, or 30 years. Very standard that you cannot refund that for 10 years. That is, doing anything other than that, you can do it, but you oftentimes will pay a little more because the investor has less certainty how long they'll be able to hold that bond. With the bank, yes, you are correct. There would likely be a period of time with a bank where you can't prepay it. And even when you can prepay it, there may be a penalty of 1%, 2%, 3%. And so, and it's all over the map. It depends on the bank. But I'll give you a pretty reasonable scenario with a bank. They say, okay, we're going to give you a rate of whatever I told you, 4.25% for 20 years. It's fixed for 20 years. It will never change unless you want to prepay it. But you cannot prepay it for the first 7 years. And beginning in year 8, there's a 3% penalty. 3%, each percent is $10,000 per million. So at that time, let's just keep the math simple. If it's 10 million outstanding, and there's a 3% penalty, 3% is 10, 30 times 10 is $300,000 to prepay it. So you gotta have a real good option to overcome that. But maybe in year 9, it's a 2% penalty. Year 10, there's no penalty. It will be all over the map as to what banks will propose. If we're serious about wanting to do something through VRA as early as the spring of '27, one, remember, I don't think we're going to be able to get a commitment from them today to be in their pool next spring. But there is a path where you could say, look, maybe we do a construction loan this summer, and at that point, the lender knows you want to prepay this in the next year. And so they will build that into their proposal. But that's a scenario where there's a very short, that bank says we got to be 100% paid off in a year. And you can prepay it without penalty through VRA, but right now we don't know whether that's a real option for us a year from now. So there are ways that people do that, but in our situation with VRA, it's just there's some uncertainty that I'd think long and hard about before we go down that road. When you have a very good opportunity, if you want to do this project, to do long-term fixed rates at pretty attractive levels now or this summer, and in the future, maybe there's an opportunity to refinance it for savings. We look at that pretty regularly. The county has done those before. But waiting to do your long-term borrowing in the spring of '27 could look backwards and say that was genius. Rates fell. That was a really good idea. Alternatively, we might have wished we had done it in the summer of '26. It's very hard to know. Impossible to know.
Dr. Leming.
I appreciate that discourse. I'm not inclined to follow that path personally. I think it's important to go forward with some level of certainty, number one. Number two, I am personally in favor of public issuance personally. And three, I'm personally in favor of the longest term on the public issuance that we can achieve. And number four, I would like to see us do principal payments starting in '28. there are lots of other capital projects that this board is going to need to look at. And while that drives the total cost up, I just think that's the path forward, to be honest with you. I do have a question about public issuance, and that is, let's say you get to a point in the future where we're a 30-year loan and we're 20 years into the loan, into paying the bonds back, I apologize. Is there an opportunity to refund those outstanding bonds at that time if there's a lower interest rate?
Absolutely. It
I
actually
thought
will
there
happen
was.
in year 10.
Thank you. That was the number I was kind of looking for.
Yep.
And I appreciate that.
So you could do 30 and then 10.
Right.
10 years, if you did 30, 10 years in, you could prepay it. At that point, it's a 20-year loan.
Right.
Right? We don't know what rates will do between now and 10 years from now, but one thing you have going in your favor is it's no longer a 30-year loan, it's a 20-year loan. So it would be extremely rare that a financing like this, if you did it for 30 years, it would be extremely rare that there would never be an opportunity to refund it. Don't know when it would occur and how much savings there would be, but it going from year 1 to 30 and never refunding it, I can't say it never happens, but it'd be very rare.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Leming.
I'm still following you down this rabbit hole, if you'll let me go with you a little bit more. You talk about annual payments. Are these literally annual payments or are these monthly payments?
With the bank, they'll accommodate most anything. We oftentimes do truly annual, one time a year, principal and interest. Banks are good with that. You could do monthly, quarterly. Public issuance, very standard. You pay principal once a year and you pay interest twice a year. So what it would not normally, for example, we closed the loan in June of 26. Well, I got the assumptions here. There's no reason to change it. You would make annual principal payment on 6/1, June 1, and you would make interest on 6/1 and 12/1. Now you could do, that's 6 and 12. You could do 7 and July and January, or August and February. It's 6 months apart.
Mr. Chairman, on those structures, I know, for example, and I'm going to just slip into my amortization mode for a quick second, if that's okay. Is there the opportunity to make additional principal payments throughout the life of the loan to decrease the life of the loan?
With the public
That's my
issuance
question.
after 10 years. With the public issuance, the language will say, in layman's terms, beginning in year 10, insert the date, the county may prepay this loan in whole or in part on any date without penalty.
Or you could refund it or refinance it.
Yes.
Right. But
And they treat it the same way, whether you're paying extra money because you got it, or you go and you refund it. And with the public issuance, there's nothing that would preclude you from refunding it if it made sense through a bank loan or VRA. That's 10 years down the road.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Cole, what exactly, what do you, so in my limited legal brain, which Mr. Wilmot knows is very small, I kind of hear the words time is essence, time is of the essence in the air. That's what I believe I hear. And what is it that you need from the board?
Well,
And I know the overarching answer to that, but I mean,
yeah.
what's the next step you need?
Sure. So maybe it's page 8. And what I would say is, obviously there needs to be a decision. We want to ultimately fund this project. A decision about, are you willing to fund it based on the estimated cost, or do you want to wait for the bid cost so you know exactly what you need? I think that's an important decision for everybody to weigh in on. Oftentimes we want to wait so that if we need 16.8 million or 17.9 million, you know that. You don't borrow too much or too little. What we've set up on the left side is trying to provide you all, again, understanding that the project isn't probably going to be bid till the summer. Maybe it's June or July. And if you say, we don't want to borrow until we know the bid, right? We could solicit proposals from banks, non-binding proposals, on the front end of this calendar so that we know what banks are interested, who's willing to go 20 years, is anybody willing to go 25 years, what are their interest rates, and maybe even get a rate from them that we could lock into July. And if we do that and several banks propose, you would not be obligated to move forward with them. It is a non-binding proposal unless you accept it, right? And what's involved to do that? We put an RFP together. We have a little bit of interaction with staff, not a tremendous effort to get the RFP out. We like it to be out for 30 days, bring it back, and then we know what banks are interested, at what rate, what are their terms and conditions. And now we've got a good data point for the bank option, and we can compare it to the public sale. If at that time the bank option comes back and you said, it just doesn't look good, the public sale's a lot better, whatever the case may be, we have allowed ourselves enough time to get the public sale going and still be in a position to get you the money in July when the bids are available. So the bank solicitation could be done based on estimates. If I was writing it tonight, I'd say the county's looking to borrow $20 million or an amount not to exceed 20 for a fire station, a discussion of that debt and the security, the collateral, all of those are important. But we could do that on the front end, have that in hand to present to you all. Here are the 4 bank bids we received, the rates, the terms and conditions, and here is how they compare to each other, and here is how they compare to the public bond market, and then you could make a decision, go with XYZ Bank, or go forward and get that public transaction underway.
Mr. Chairman?
Dr. Leming, then Dr. Ward.
To some extent, I think it's probably mature for a motion, and maybe I could divide the motion before I state it, but let me just go piecemeal. I hear Mr. Cole, and I hear the firefighters, and I hear the community want to hear us agree as a group that we are going to fund this project. And I would move that the Board of Supervisors of Gloucester County agree by affirmative vote to move forward with funding this project, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second. But didn't we do that in August?
Yes, we did that a while back. So, but
Okay.
at the same time, there's 3 new.
By the way, respectfully, that's a different board. This is a different board.
sure.
And that's
Correct.
the reason I restated the motion.
Okay.
Correct. We have a motion, we have a second. Do you want to bring your topic up now, or you want to vote on this and then come back to you? I'm asking Dr. Orth, because
Well,
he's,
just some discussion. So, that RFP, we would also indicate the amount, right?
Yes, but
So
we would use an estimate.
Yeah, an estimate.
And, it is not uncommon when we get a bank proposal back and we say, hey, we wrote 20, we really need 18.6, or we need 21.5. We have that ability with banks
But we could wait too, right?
you could wait.
Because I know, the reason why I bring this up, remember Mr. Bizzani always bringing up the issue of, if someone knows that we're going to be borrowing 20 million, they know what we have, versus if a bid goes out, they don't know yet what we're going to do. But I guess everyone knows it's going to be around 20 million. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think you're talking about
Yeah,
the contractors.
That's right.
Yeah, if they're watching tonight, they
watching
know
tonight.
17.5 plus a
Yeah.
contingency.
So that's just my,
Okay.
yeah.
so, any other discussion before we vote on Dr. Leming's first motion?
I just want to make sure I state that this board is aware that I am a part of Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue as a board member and assistant chief, and I think it's important to disclose that. I'm not compensated, I'm a volunteer. I just want to make sure I put that out there beforehand.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Nicosia?
Dr. Leming, I want to piggyback on something you said, and something I've said here for 3 years now. I think it's about insurances. Okay? We did agree many months ago to previous board to fully fund this fire department. However, there's contention, frustration, lack of communication, whatever word you want to use. And I think it's time that we all have a sense of assurance, okay? Whether that be putting it out to the banks, whether that be what you just explained, but putting ink to the paper to say to the fire department, we hear you, also looking out for the county's best interest, but saying to the fire department, we hear you, this is what we are going to do, this is what we're willing to do, we're willing to walk in step with you to get this project done. I think this is a step that needs to be done. Because I think, as has been stated, $20 million is kind of the number that's been hanging around there. So I think that if we can put some ink to paper, I think it would ease some of the what's going on. It's not a word. The word is not coming to me, but we know we support them, and they know we support them. So if we put ink to paper, then we all know as a collective group what it's going to take financially, who's in our corner, and who's willing to give us, when the time comes, who's willing to work with us.
Yes, Ms. Hanson.
I'm certainly willing to agree to, move forward with funding for the project, of course, but whatever that looks like needs to be in the best interest of the taxpayers and the residents as well. So whatever proposals move forward as far as that is concerned, that is what I'm going to be looking at, is the financing, who's going to pay for it, ownership, what that's going to look like long term. And so certainly we want this to happen, but it has to look good for all constituents, including my district. We do benefit from Gloucester Fire and Rescue as well. So, but it has to make sense tax-wise and making sure that we are spending the money in the way that it should be spent. And so I certainly just wanted to add that.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Hutson, do you have anything?
But we're also going to pursue getting our rating in addition to this. So
my thought was...
Well, I don't even think we need a motion. I think what we do is, if we're going to look, I guess we're spending $60,000 potentially, so yes, we should. But I think we need to make sure where our rating is, because when would we get our rating back? Early to mid-April?
Well, if we started now, yes. It's, let me think about it. It's about a 45-day process to get a rating. My thought was initially that we could do this bank RFP and get proposals back in early March from the banks. And at that point, we have the bank option very quantifiable, and we can show you what does that look like compared to, we could do a single A county or a double A county issuance. We could run both. Small differences, but over a long term, there's significant. So we could do it that way, or you could say, I think in order to do that analysis, I want to know where our rating is, but you may find that if the bank rate is compelling, you really didn't need that rating to start with. So it may be that when we compare the bank rates from the RFP to the public bond issuance, we run single versus double A, so you can see the magnitude but not have to invest that time or money up to that point. If you don't like the bank option, then we would work to get that public issuance up and running very quickly.
But if we wait past January through, it's January through March right now based on your sheet, in 45 more days, that's going to put it mid-April, 1st of May, getting it back, to then get a quantitative amount of where the difference is. I mean, I think we need to work hand in hand, lockstep, to see where our rating is. If there's an ability for us to get a 30-year more bond rating.
Sure. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Current discussion is not relevant or germane to the motion on the floor.
Well, yeah, I can see that, but with that, there is a motion. No further discussion on that at the moment.
I'll bring it back up then.
Correct. All in favor of funding the board, reaffirming their support to fund the fire department? All in favor? Aye. Or do you want a roll call, Mr. Wilmot? What would you prefer? Ms. Steele, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Leming?
Yes.
Mr. Hutson?
Yes.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Nicosia?
Yes.
Ms. Hanson? Yes. Mr. Bonniville?
Yes.
Dr. Orth?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Hutson?
Okay, Mr. Cole, let's get back to where we just were. I think it's important that we go hand in hand and get the bond rating to see what's best for
We
the...
could, in that scenario, we could do the bank RFP, we could do the rating interaction with staff, and have those things come together at very close to the same time so that we're looking at the bank rates and we're looking at the public issuance with a rating that in hand that we know. But there would be, again, not talking out of it, but there would be, to do the rating part, there would be some time and expense.
Right, but I think if there's any chance of us getting a 30-year terms, we need to do it with the bonds.
That's right, yes, 30-year terms, I do not think there's a bank option out there on a fixed rate for 30 years. I don't think that exists.
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Lemon?
I move that the Gloucester County Board of Supervisors adopt a resolution authorizing Mr. Cole and the Director of Finance to move forward with a request for proposals from the banks for a credit rating and for requests for bids, construction bids simultaneously at this time. Is that correct?
Well,
No, we can't do it.
I don't, we don't, not ready for the construction
Oh, it's
portion.
not.
So let's do the first two.
Strike the third,
Okay.
excuse me. I thought we were there.
Not quite. Very close. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Hanson.
Is it my understanding that in order to move forward with this, for him to go and looking for the financing, that we have some kind of language that determines what we've been discussing as far as ownership or who holds the bond and who,
For this
all of
part,
that?
no.
Okay.
That'll come later when we're actually preparing whatever documents we go forward with, either it be a bank or, if I'm correct, either the bank financing or the public issuance.
With the bank financing, we can write that in such a way that if you go back to that slide with the point 1 and 2 at the bottom, that we discuss those 2 points. How we get there, we can leave that a little bit open because I know that's an ongoing conversation for you all. With getting the rating, that's with the banks. I think we can finesse that in a very broad language. And then, but sooner or later, if we like the bank, right, they're going to say, all right, show us the documents. With the rating, we're going to be talking to the rating agencies. They are going to care about the nuances of that. And so it doesn't have to be decided tonight, but it's something that you all will need to address relatively soon.
Right, I just didn't want to put the cart before the horse if I was understanding that correctly, so, all right, I understand, thank you.
Yep. Motion, did we have a second? We got the second, sorry. Okay. Any other discussion on this matter? Mr. Wilmot?
Do we know how we're gonna pay for that? The ratings, 30,000, 2 ratings, right, 2? Is that what you
Correct.
said?
There is 2.
60,000. So we
That's
have,
an estimate.
we have that money? I didn't bring it with me.
Nor did I.
Okay.
Yes, please, Ms. Callaway. I figured it was going to have to come back as a resolution for us to spend it at a subsequent meeting anyway, Mr. Wilmot. That's why I wasn't too worried about it at this point tonight.
I'm comfortable that we can spend the $60,000 between
If she's comfortable, I'm
various savings.
I was thinking we would have this, that at the next meeting for us to expend that money for that rating.
I can let you know the
Since it's
savings
not
in which.
I just thought we'd want to start tomorrow getting the ratings. So we want to do it tomorrow, or today if possible.
We'll pay in 45 days, so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if, we're not sure if it's going to be 60,000. Is our other,
I can expand on that.
Mr. Chairman.
One, it's an estimate, please remember that. Two, it's not due till after the process is done. Three, if you do have to spend the money to make the payment, you can include it in the financing when it comes due. So you might have to front the money, but you can get it back if that's your preference.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Dr. Leming.
question for council. Would an amendment to the motion somewhat to the degree of saying, and authorize the expenditure of up to a certain amount of money for the said credit ratings, would that satisfy you, or?
Thank you, Dr. Leming. I'm satisfied with Ms. Callaway's indication that the county, and Mr. Cole's indication that, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that if it's going to cost money, that we have the money to spend, and that
Correct.
we're willing to spend it. That's all. But thank you.
Thank you.
And there was, in the motion, it said a resolution. There's no resolution. Are we looking for a resolution to do this or a motion to do this?
Well, it's actually the same thing.
Okay.
Boards of supervisors can only act by either ordinance or resolution. So a motion, in effect, is a resolution.
I shouldn't have asked that.
And that's why you're in finance and not in being a
Thank
lawyer.
you.
Yes. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion before we're spending more money? Okay. Ms. Steele, would you please poll the board?
Mr. Hutson?
Yes.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Nicosia? Yes. Ms. Hanson? Yes. Mr. Bonniville?
Yes.
Dr. Orth?
Yes.
Dr. Leming?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Cole, thank you very much. Please, safe travels back to Richmond. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have an appropriation of state grant funds from the Virginia Department of Fire Programs Burn Building Repairs. Ms. Callaway, Deputy County Administrator and Chief Financial Officer. Sorry, I left it out the first time. I glossed over it with all the names following you, so.
Oh, I don't need all that. Good evening again. This item is to request an appropriation of $50,000, and this is grant funding that's been awarded by the Virginia Department of Fire Programs, and this is going to fund repairs at the burn building that's located in Harcum at Gloucester Volunteer Fire and Rescue Station 4. The fire department representatives have worked with the county finance staff to draft this application, which was subsequently awarded. The total cost of the repairs is expected to be around $56,000, and the fire department is going to fund the repairs in excess of grant funding. So there is no local impact for this resolution, which appears on page 164 of your board packet.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Nicosia?
Yes.
Ms. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Bonneville?
Yes.
Dr. Orth?
Yes.
Dr. Leming?
Yes.
Mr. Hutson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to wait for the fire
Yes.
department, whose attendance is greatly appreciated?
Yes.
To make an exodus
Yes.
from the building?
We'll take a brief break while they leave. Okay. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We will now get into the discussion on the Gloucester Gateway at Gloucester Point. Ms. Carol Steele, County Administrator, and Ms. Carol Rizzio, Assistant Director of Planning and Zoning and Environmental Programs.
Okay, thank you.
Is that one of our cars
I
that
hope
needs to
not.
be addressed?
Philip's not here, so no.
So Carol and I are gonna kind of do a sandwich situation where I'm gonna introduce the topic. She's gonna go over the PowerPoint with the images, and then I'm gonna come back and clarify about the budget, which I'm realizing I left on my computer, but I think I know pretty well in my head. So first of all, just kind of, I know there's been a number of questions and things about this, and I thought it'd just be helpful for the public to better understand why this topic is even being discussed. It's interesting how people interpret different words and kind of the focus on things. So we have routinely referred to the entrance to Gloucester Point at the Coleman Bridge as the gateway versus a gateway project, but this is kind of a combination of things. Gloucester County years ago created a, if you wanted to say, overall gateway project, and we worked with the Department of Transportation to have signs that are colonial in appearance and color, put at 198, at 14, and at 17, and then we also did matching in style signs coordinated for the Main Street entrances. So we were not able to, at that time, put up a sign at Gloucester Point. And there was definite, I think, belief that we needed more than just one of these small signs. Some of y'all might recall that there was a Welcome to Gloucester sign on the left-hand side as you came across the bridge that was the old style, wooden style, with the emblems of the different civic groups. And because that was there, that served as the county's welcome. And the sign became dilapidated and literally falling apart, wasn't kept up, and was taken down. In the meanwhile, the Chamber of Commerce felt like we were missing the opportunity to let people know they were into Gloucester County and to do it in a nice way, so they created their own project and did a sign that Mr. Belvin, a former board member, gave land to them to be able to put up the brick sign that's there. For years, again, there's been discussion about sort of two aspects. We need something at the entrance that should be appropriate, and then also there's been a lot of discussion and a number of comments been made on social media and made to board members and made to myself as well that kind of criticizing that Gloucester County doesn't care about Gloucester Point and that funding doesn't go down there and it doesn't look, look how nice Main Street looks with the banners and the signs, and that was done, philanthropically, and that there's nothing at the point. So I was asked as early as 2019 by the board, back when I was Assistant County Administrator, to come up with a program, and I threw out all kinds of ideas, asked for the board, what to go, what to do. We started putting into our FMRR budget like $25,000, and we ended up doing a small planting with daffodils that the Daffodil Club donated and put in for us, and then Carol helped us designing, because we had to ask for a VDOT permit. And so we've made this effort. We put in a sign that was a welcome to the county and then replaced it because it was Christmas or holiday, and then was a more traditional one kind of permanently. We had to make it a better sign. And so the signs we've had up on the right-hand side been up since December of 2024. Board members will recall that it's still been a topic. I've kind of been chastised of why don't we have something? When are we going to have something? And so when the legislative agenda time came up for topics, I brought this up as this could be the ideal time for the board to support and ask for state funding, because many people feel that Gloucester paid more than their fair share of having to host the Toll Plaza twice, last time for 25 years. and having the traffic congestion and all those things. And then they have to put about $500,000 into removing that structure. And then in addition to that, VDOT has to come in and realign the roads and things. So with the board's instruction, we submitted, I talked to Delegate Hodges and then talked with our Senator Ron McDougall, and they both agreed to put in a proposal. And so that's when, in this time period, we're saying, well, we got to know what we're asking for, and we don't have the money to do the full design and really know what it's going to cost. So I asked Carol to loan us her expertise, and she was kind enough to get her husband, who's also a landscape architect, to donate time, and for them to come up with a concept, which she's going to walk us through. So I really feel like this has been up with the previous board, very supported. I've said I'm not holding my breath that we're going to get this state funding, and I'll explain more about the budget later. But I'm so excited that we finally are asking, and that we're not going to let the opportunity go by where all these changes are going to happen and maybe we don't benefit from that. So with this point, I'm going to turn it over to Carol to talk about, and I had asked to have this added to the agenda because I wanted the board to see what she had developed, and I didn't want to just send it out on a weekly report. I wanted the public to see, to start getting potentially excited and recognizing that the staff and the board very much cares about the appearance of Gloucester Point.
So good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and welcome to new members. I'm looking forward to working with you all. So yeah, I think as Carol said, you know, the gateway from the point from Route 17 over the bridge has been talked about a lot. And the toll right now is a traffic calming feature. Everybody has to slow down when they hit the toll as you're going through a narrow environment. It sets the stage for what that looks like. All that's going away, and you're going to have a lot of land. It's going to change. So it's an opportunity, as Carol said, to kind of set the stage for what the point may look like, open up some opportunities that maybe haven't been there in the past because of the toll. In around 2011, the Planning and Zoning Department put together a Gloucester Point Haze plan, and Ann always says in that plan, one of the themes was they want people to drive to Gloucester Point, not through Gloucester Point. So kind of creating a place there, something you've arrived. And I'll just reiterate, the ideas in here they're not final designs by any means. They're ideas of what can happen and locations maybe for opportunities. I understand you have to forward the slides. So community gateways are more than just signs and landscaping. They're tools. They're tools for branding, for economic development, safety, community pride, shaping both how outsiders see a town and how residents feel about their hometown. And when I think of gateways, if you drive by a residential community that has a nice gateway entrance feature, it tells you or you have an impression of what that community looks like or is about, whether you drive in it or not. So this is just trying to establish that for Gloucester as you come across the bridge. And it's really placemaking in my mind, opportunities for placemaking. So the area that we looked at was pretty much as you start to come down off the bridge, all the way to the Lafayette Heights intersection is the area we analyzed. And not a lot of public land in this area. There's the historic park that's owned publicly and the beach. But other than that, VDOT owns the roads. Not a lot of public opportunity to create a really gateway. And a lot of this area was developed prior to zoning. So no landscaping regs, no real regs on how development happens. So a lot of it is, pre-built to zoning, and there's not a lot of landscaping in the parking lots. And even if these were redeveloped, to think that as it gets redeveloped, it'll look better, it will look better as parcels redevelop when they do. It's kind of slow going down here. We still don't have a whole lot of regulations that would require a lot of landscaping or plantings to make it really improve a lot. Okay, so I've kind of broken up that corridor into 4 areas. So the first one, you're on the bridge. You're coming down the bridge, and there are actually 3 overhead structures where signs were. The first 2 are in this area that you come across. The first one's got the speed limit signs of 35. I do not know if VDOT is going to keep that 35 or remove it because the tolls are going away. So potentially it could be 45 all the way through. The second one, which is highlighted in the pink circle, It has nothing on the right other than oversized vehicles stay to the right. It has nothing going southbound, so it's opportunity maybe for some signage. The stars on the map, of course, is the beach. You know, as you drive over, you can see the beach. That's a great feature. The grant we got to improve the beach is just going to improve that view. That's definitely an asset to the gateway. And then the VIMS building, it's a beautiful building on the right. It really starts to help set the stage. So a lot of assets. Okay. And then the view, coming, top of the bridge. It's a beautiful view of Gloucester Point. Okay. And so getting a little closer. That sign that was highlighted, so it's the second overhead sign. As you're coming down, the opportunity, you can flip one more, if you can't read it for the public, it says Middle Peninsula on that. And I grew up in Newport News, and I live in York, and I never heard the term Middle Peninsula until I started working for the county. And it's all the regional efforts. We have the Middle Peninsula Planners meetings. There was a lot of Middle Peninsula economic development work that was trying to get regionally, how can we increase our performance regionally with tourism, with economic development, with all kinds of things. So it's a branding for the Middle Peninsula. And also because we were going to General Assembly for funding, the idea to broaden the ask. It's not just for Gloucester, it can really start to brand the whole Middle Peninsula together. And so if you go one more, it's just a little more close up. Now you can actually probably see the sign. And none of this is final. Like, we don't know what will go on the banners, what they look like. I think the main theme here is that they're vertical because everything is horizontal. Make a more vertical banner is really the only design constraint in there. Okay. So the next area is as you come down a little bit more, there's trees that line the roadway, which is kind of nice. As you further, you go under that third overhead structure. And to the right, it starts to open up. And there's some utility structures that are VIMS. There's the new parking lot that is VIMS. It's kind of the back door to VIMS, their parking lot. And then they have some utility trucks. So a lot of utilitarian stuff. They've put some plants in. They're just small. They will grow up. They will make that view improved. There's some I think there's some kudzu on that wall that you can see in that one picture is kind of growing over and kind of creates a little bit of an eyesore. So to the right, there's a lot of utilities and such in the way. The stars, again, are the VIMS building. It's a beautiful feature along that way. And then the historic Tyndall Point Park, which, as I said, I've lived in the area forever. My parents moved to Matthews about 25 years ago, so we were coming across this bridge a lot. You see Tyndall Point and with the earthen berms, and it was cleaned up, and it was really a beautiful entrance. I stopped there many times. I was like, oh, what's that? You want to invite people in by visual scene. So that historic park is a nice feature to have at the point, and it is county-owned, so it is something we can get cleaned up again, and I think we're in the process of doing that now. Okay, one more. So this is kind of what it looks like now. Flip one more. And so that image to the right, it's kind of hard to see even in this, but on the top right, that's the Tyndall Point sign, which is the focal point on the left. So it's there, but it's really hard to see because it's dark and there's a lot of underbrush, and it's just not, it's an older sign. It's not lit. It's not a great sign, but that's an opportunity. You'll see on the right, the evolving vegetative buffer that, could have some supplemental plantings along it to kind of mask the parking lot and the utilitarian uses a little bit more. And then going back and doing what was done in the past, clearing up so you can see the earthen berms, and that becomes an inviting visual feature as you come into the gateway, and people know it's there. I want to go see it. Okay. And then, so this is just a conceptual of what that might look like if you put an actual nice sign feature, maybe continued the banners and supplemented the screening on the right. Okay. So then moving down a little further, this is mostly around where the toll booths are existing, that yellow circled area is where those toll booths are. So when the toll booths are removed, it's wide, expansive pavement. There's going to be a lot of extra pavement there. So we were like, okay, what can we do with all this extra pavement? Could be an opportunity. The building, the Coleman Memorial Building that's right there next to the toll booths is, some money was put into that building when it was built. It's a nice building. It's got a nice little plaza area. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen to that. I think they've offered it to the state, and they're deciding if they want it or not. And then the park, the historic park, again, in this area, still a feature. And an opportunity for that same type of signage to be as you're leaving Gloucester, where you can see the park. There's an opportunity for a nicer sign there, you know, kind of, because you get them coming and going with the Tyndall Point sign, possibly. Okay? So this is the concept for the median. And it really is trying to beautify the area as well as slow traffic down by closing the space vertically and horizontally. So it's inserting a median in the center and still allowing 3 lanes on each northbound and southbound side. So the exact feature of what goes on the median still yet to be determined. Some landscaping, possibly a sign. When we were looking at it, it kind of reminded a little bit of the historic court circle, where you go around the center. So I don't know if that feature was kind of interesting. Okay, flip. So this is what it looks now with the construction and VDOT kind of having us go to the right to go through this whole booth and flip one more time. And that's just a concept of possibly what it could look like. Now again, nothing set in stone, just presenting an idea. Features have not been designed. Okay. And then the last area is coming out of that, and there's the little turnaround where if you don't want to go over the bridge, you can make the U-turn. And there's that area to the right that was identified for maybe some landscaping, maybe a nice sign. And because there's so much other stuff going on, we felt that doing something vertical in that area would be nice. Landscaping you could do, but if that's all you do, it kind of gets lost. You're coming out and you're just zooming by it. And then going further down, the first intersection you come to where there is a light as you come off the bridge is a Lafayette Heights intersection. It does have ped crossings on 3 sides of it. So it is somewhat, if they remove the bridge and traffic continues to go straight, you know, you go down the Yorktown side, you speed up going down the hill, and you just go. You know, there's no real thing to slow people down. So the median feature at the toll booth kind of slow people down a little bit, and then some opportunity. There's not much room, but something at that intersection to help slow people down. So this is a view of currently what it looks like, and then flip, and what it could possibly look like. And the 2 structures on the right that are in that paved area, that is purely conceptual. Could be an art piece, could be a sign, it could be anything, but something vertical, I think, is needed in that area. And then you see the landscaping just kind of supporting that. You have the median that extends all the way to that turnaround. And then so talking about that intersection, and you know, this is a VDOT thing, because VDOT does maintain our roads. I don't know how, you can just hear them now. But you know, you've probably seen in urban areas maybe where the pavement is different colors for the bike lane or for the bus lane or something, and it kind of really narrows down that roadway. And when you narrow down a roadway or you create different visual cues, it tells the motorist that something's happening here, I need to pay attention, versus it all just being blacked up. So the idea here is that possibly that intersection could have a colored asphalt in it, where it changes the look around those where the crosswalk is, kind of warning that, hey, there's pedestrians possibly in this area, and this is a special area you need to slow down in. Okay. And then these are just other ideas as we were walking around and looking. There's that wall if you're on, I can't remember the name of the road. Vernon. If you're on Vernon next to the park, there's a wall where the road for the bridge starts to be elevated, and it's not a very attractive wall. But possibly you could hire or have a art competition or something for some type of mural. And these are not included in the request. These are just ideas that we came up with. So a mural planted along that section to kind of accentuate the historic nature of Tyndall Point. And then, as I said, a lot of money was put into this walkway that goes to the old bridge toll building. So there's those glass windows. If this sidewalk, if VIMS did decide they wanted it and this sidewalk became part of their pedestrian circulation, doing something in those etched glass, some theme to kind of bring personality and placemaking to the area. Okay. And then this is just an example of it. So VIMS has a lot of their screening down around their BMP area, which is in the image to the right, further down than you see here, but there is a little, grassy area that could possibly have some supplemental plantings, because this, you see the garbage can there, and there's a shed there to just kind of screen the area a little more, strategic screening. Not that you have to screen it all out, I wouldn't want to do that, but just some strategic placement of plantings. I think that's
Get back to, thank you, Carol, to the budget and a couple other points. Carol mentioned that, thank you. Carol mentioned that Tyndall's Point Park is owned by the county. In 1972, the park was purchased, the old fort and historic grounds were bought by the county to develop into a park, and there is an additional parcel that is in between what we own, sort of on both sides, that was donated to the National Park Service. It hasn't been corrected yet, just in case anybody happens to go, whether public or board members, onto our GIS map system. It has the little building as being the National Park Service property. It's actually the parcel next to that. And it also notes that it's, I think it says U.S. Navy, but it was provided to the Park Service. We've had a partnership with them for a number of years. They helped support the interpretive walkway that we put through that went through their property. We've allowed them to put signage on our property because it literally just takes about an act of Congress to do something on their property, and they said, can we put our sign on yours? The building was used during the bicentennial. It was my understanding, and then there's a whole lot of people who were around that know better, but I believe it was an old restaurant, and then again the county purchased it. The board, at least the former board members will know that we've also had an encroachment issue that's been going on since the 1970s, and we've been down there and looked at it, and it's something that we need to address, but we were kind of waiting until maybe VEMS gets ready to do, because they've ended up purchasing a lot of the parcels down there, or 3 of the parcels, and we know that they can build their new facility on the property that they purchased, and not where it's encroached. So that's something to come in the future, but really don't want to upset the few neighbors down there for what we've got going on at this time. But the county is very dedicated and working literally daily on the initiative for 2031. Networking again today with the York County and their efforts and what's going on. And I think between now and 2031, I hope that the board will see and the public will see a number of changes that are going to finally get the historical recognition that everybody has wanted. And we have to basically earn it, because it's not something that a lot of people know. Even our residents don't know about the history there. And this is just 2031, the 250th anniversary of the Siege of Yorktown and the Second Surrender. It's phenomenal opportunities for the county. Also the reference that was made to the Middle Peninsula, those of us who've served Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission and other committees, we know we use that term, and it seems that the general public, from what I can tell outside, Virginians kind of in our area, Northern Virginia, et cetera, they know the Northern Neck. That name has a much more recognizable region than the Middle Peninsula does. This was an issue with the Middle Peninsula State Park when that was brought up too. So whether that sign goes up or recognition goes up, I don't know, but the idea was, again, we're looking at a statewide audience. We have other community members that have talked in the past of wanting to have a regional visitor center at Gloucester Point. We have our own. We do help direct people, beyond Gloucester County. But there's a number of opportunities that can happen. The budget and the concerns that, people are raising, I understand it's expensive to do things now. And looking at a ballpark estimate for the majority of the items, meaning not the Tyndall's Point mural and things, but looking at the banners, the flag poles, the piece of art, the landscaping, changing, and we're talking about having to dig up existing asphalt put in dirt, put in curb and gutter, all those kind of things. The estimate that our county engineer gave us was 2.5 million. I was not about for us to be laughed out of the General Assembly for saying, are you kidding me at 2.5? So I literally went through and tried to work on the budget at 75% for certain things, 60% for certain things, taking out what I don't think the General Assembly would cover. Like, I don't think they're gonna cover banners that say Gloucester County on them or represent Gloucester County in this reshaping of the road. And again, for people who haven't been here a long time, may not remember that when the road widening happened, we lost our direct access to Tyndall's Point Park. It changed things and we sort of took a hit. So this is, again, try to make it right and do it as a final development. And I think it is absolutely for tourism and promoting the county, but it's also for the residents to have pride in place as they come home and to enjoy, like I think we all generally enjoy how much it's much more attractive in front of Walmart than it used to be before that landscaping was done. So I tweaked the budget and came up with this, $1.5 million figure that I thought might at least not shock people because they know doing road work and things, it's expensive. The final cost is, and what gets done is going to be completely dependent upon the design and how far it goes. If the General Assembly passed legislation and said, we'll Commonwealth Transportation Board and the VDOT budget says, we'll put in $500,000 to beautify, I think all of us would be like, okay, great, we have a budget of $500,000, what can we go do? And so I think we can shape whatever happens to the funding that becomes available, if any does. And now at least we have sort of a vision that maybe if this doesn't happen, that others might start endorsing. I don't ever see us having that kind of funding without assistance. The Virginia Tourism Corporation does not provide funding for things like this. They provide marketing money. There are some grants that are related to the federal transportation money and maybe some limited ones with the state that might help if we were addressing other things like community access and accessibility, like the sidewalk part or the pedestrian crossing. So we can continue to look for donations. We can look for other funding streams. The idea was to start this off and see whether we can get anything in the budget. And so I'm more than happy to answer questions and take feedback. And if the board, on the extreme side, if the board says, we don't really want to do this, then as your county administrator, I'll go and ask for the bill to be pulled. But this is what I think that a lot of people did want to see something significant happen at Gloucester Point. So this is our cross our fingers opportunity.
Any questions for Ms. Steele? Dr. Orth?
So this is a special request as an amendment to the state budget.
Yes.
Put
we
in
have
by-
two amendments that the board asked for. One is for $50,000 for a feasibility study for how the T.C. Walker House could be used. And that's with support from Hampton University. And this for working with VDOT, which again will greatly change the price of how much they do and how much we contracted out.
So it's possible that the request could be facilitated by the General Assembly, but it may not be for all that we ask for. So it's hard to say what we would get given the number of amendments for budgetary issues that will.
Yeah, we could get nothing.
Then we could get nothing, right?
Right.
Yeah. But if you don't ask.
We're not going to get anything. And we've highlighted, what was done there, what our history is.
If you don't ask, the answer's always no.
Right, and the leading up to 2031, all those things were put in the appeal.
Yeah. And Ms. Steele was correct that the previous board, there were discussions about how to beautify the entrance to Gloucester Point. So, this is something that's not new. I mean,
Right,
but
and
for the new
my
people.
only concern is I know that, the last time I spoke with Mr. McKnight, that the toll plaza removal had to be put out for rebid, because it was, it has, okay. So, I know there's money being spent down there. I don't know how much will be left for this, but I don't see a need to remove it, because if we get it, great. If we get any of it, great, and if we don't get any, then we'll figure something else out.
Ms. Rizzio, I know when you look at different lights and they put another little head up there, the poles aren't strong enough. Did you talk with VDOT to see if the light poles could handle a banner?
We have not taken it to that level.
You
We
haven't
did
done
talk
anything, this is all,
We have shared with VDOT our ideas and kind of are in discussion with that, but we haven't looked structurally at the poles or, yeah.
And Mr. McKnight said that they have other locations where they have allowed banners on their streetlights and other, places. So he wasn't too concerned about that. He definitely was running up the idea of whether those structural pieces are even going to stay or whether they would allow them to be used for signage.
Dr.
Thank you.
Leming?
I'm trying to think how to approach this in a constructive construct. Mr. Chairman, you've heard the phrase spot zoning. I think this is kind of spot promoting. That's my own personal opinion. I've been through gateway branding processes in the past. The folks who commute up and down these roads know where they are, they know where they came from, and they know where they're going. And respectfully, most of the time, while there may be some merit in public appeal to the commuters, really and truly gateways are not for the commuting vehicular public. They're really specifically to advertise and project a brand for the non-commuting, non-commercial vehicular public. They're literally advertising designed to project a brand that people will want to visit and will want to spend their tourism dollars. What I see is no consistent brand. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit, give myself a little latitude. I'll give an example. When I became a board member, I was given 2 pins for Gloucester County, and I'm glad to wear them both, by the way. One is the beehive. That was an attempt at a brand for Gloucester County. And there's a nice green G now, which is another brand for Gloucester County. And I'm just confused about what we're trying to promote. Are we trying to promote historic Gloucester County and its historic resources? I've heard Mr. Bonniville say, and if I quote you wrong, Nick, just tell me, I've heard Mr. Bonniville say we really probably are and always will be a bedroom community. And so really and truly one of the only assets that we have locally is our historic resources. And if God gave us lemons, we should make lemonade. And if God gave us historic resources, we should make tourism out of them. And I just see these sort of spot projects as disconnected from other brands that we have. And I just feel like there's no overall cohesive branding tourism initiative going on. I looked at the cost of the project. I calculated, by the way, it was $2.584 million. That the General Assembly was asked for 60%. Neither of the representatives you talked to or have submitted bills sit on finance committees, and that is a substantial disadvantage to those bills. I will just.
Delegate Hodges, I believe, he stated to me because he was on, I know he was on the local committee before, but he said, I thought he said I'm on the budget committee, so this will be good.
As you know, in the Commonwealth of
sure.
Virginia, resolutions that are not funded do nothing.
Right.
The finance committee rules all. So I guess my, and I went through the project and sent Ms. Steele and Ms. Rideau some personal comments that I appreciate the attempt to sort of broaden the appeal to the General Assembly by advertising the Middle Peninsula. But if the goal is to attract people to historic Gloucester, the missing corner of the historic quadrangle, I don't know how that helps us.
Right.
Tyndall Point is a precious resource. It really is. And I like to say this up front, Ms. Steele, I think you've done a yeoman's work, and Parks and Rec have done yeoman's work recently trying to clean that asset up. And you're right, we did lose direct access when that silly, the way to get to Tyndall Park now is contorted, and actually, unless you have like a GPS to guide you, I'm not sure you'd get there at all. But that certainly is part of our historic resources that we ought to be baiting people with gateway to why would they want to go to Tyndall Park. And I'm just lacking for this overall tourism master plan, I guess is what I'm lacking, so.
If I can, I'm sorry.
No, Ms. Steele?
We are working on refining our master plan. Our brand for many years has been Visit Gloucester for history, for beauty, for fun. And the idea of the fun is the outdoor recreation that we offer, which at the time that when we created that, we knew that people, whether they were going to Gloucester Point Beach or they were going in their own backyard, we didn't have Machicomico at that time. So we have, and we didn't even have Beaver Dam, to the level that we have now. But outdoor recreation is a big component of attracting tourists. The history is always, the high part for it. And so the beauty, our area, especially part of the northern part of the county on 17, our farms, our wetland areas and things. So we do have a brand, and I do believe that we need to continually address and bring in professional assistance for things like that. One of the goals, I told you, there's going to be a hefty document coming soon, but I'm not quite done with it. And it does have in there looking at hiring professional assistants to work on our brand. Not so much as thinking of logos or whatever, but it is in who are we really attracting. We know that the majority of the people who come here to Gloucester are coming from Williamsburg, that's the majority. So are they still the older people? Can we get the younger people? All that kind of thing is, I think, where we need additional professional assistance.
Mr. Hutson?
Living at the Point, there's quite a few people that come across that bridge without a state tax. And once the tolls are gone, you're going to have more, or since the tolls are gone, we're going to have more this summer, because people are bypassing 64 and 95 to stay 17 to 301. So you're going to attract more people that are potential tourists to the county. When I first saw the presentation, I didn't like the Middle Peninsula, but it makes sense because it shows that you're coming into the Middle Peninsula and then it comes into Gloucester. Up and down the courthouse, we've got the daffodils. Ms. Rizzio, when she did this, and her husband, on his free time, I guess she gets paid, so he gets paid, but they put a G on that sign right there in the bricks. It could have been a daffodil. It could have been anything, but conceptually, they were trying to figure out, okay, let's make it vertical versus horizontal. So there's different things we could put there, but if there's a chance that we can, some of it's funded by the state, and we sit there and are able to get more tourists in here as a result of the changing of the roads. Because I think once 64 opens back up, with it being a toll lane and everything else, traffic is going to stay just like it is, if not worse. So, I think we need to look at it and not be too critical of it. I think she did a great job. And, once it's explained, some of it makes sense. I think the biggest thing to me that was shown was Tyndall Point. You're coming into Gloucester Point, but it's Tyndall Point, and it's a little, so that was my only real drawback. But I think conceptually it's a great idea, and I think we just get an idea and work with it and see if we get any grants, and then we can scale back or whatever. Ms. Rizzio is more than capable of doing it.
Sure, and as to Dr. Leming's point, if you get lemons, you make lemonade. Well, if we don't ask for lemons, we can't make lemonade. And if we don't get the sugar, we can't make lemonade. So, you know, I don't, again, I don't think Ms. Rizzio and Ms. Steele or anybody's married to what they put in this proposal. It's, hey, this is what we could do if we get anything. And you know what? We may just get a new sign that says, "Welcome to Gloucester." We don't know. We don't know. But I don't want to, after they've already submitted this, I'd hate for them to go in and take it out now. I say we let it see what happens, and hopefully we get good news. If not, then we figure out how to put a "Welcome to Gloucester" sign somewhere.
But I think Dr. Leming has made some good points, needs to be considered, and we'll see what your plan is, Ms. Steele, in
And
terms of.
I expect Dr. Leming to be stirring that pot of lemonade when we get those lemons.
And let me make a comment. I wasn't really, let me be clear, Ms. Rizzio, this is a great presentation. It's creative, it's thought-provoking, it's really well done. You and your husband really did a great job. Number two, I had no intention to make a motion to pull the bill. I think my comment is a bigger comment, and that's my concern, is that there's a bigger opportunity here that's really not being met through spot processes. That's my overarching comment. I may not have said that well. I apologize.
No.
I would say I totally agree, and I know that there are citizens who think we're going down the wrong road or that it's not as good a road as it could be, but this is our opportunity, I think, to test the waters as much as any other time in the next few years to see what we can do with tourism dollars.
Well, I hope when VDOT takes the toll booth down, there is some traffic calming measures put in there, because it is crazy.
Well, and there was an initial comment that Mr. McKnight said, I don't know about this, and Carol and I both pushing back because I said, we don't want to see a state trooper having to be there all the time, or the flashing light, like when you come down the bridge at West Point telling you how fast you're really going. We need something that's much more attractive, and we do have people who are crossing 17 right now, and we don't want to see, you know, more car accidents, pedestrian accidents.
Traffic was backed up this evening all the way to Fort Eustis as a result of an accident at Dunkin' Donuts.
Wow.
They were routing people through West Point to come to the courthouse. So if has to be some kind of traffic calming at the base of that bridge.
And I'd like to point out too,
Mr. Bonneville, turn your microphone on.
I like the center portion. I did like that a lot. And as somebody who grew up down there, who used to cross 17 as a 10-year-old to go to Nick's to eat all the time, half my problem. I like the idea of it. And I think it's funny how the tides have turned, that you never came to the courthouse unless you were coming to Sutton's or you were coming to Wallace Foods to get good meat. And now, oh yeah, exactly. And now that's kind of shifted more north. So I like the concept. The flags I'm a little skeptical about, especially since I know the winds around there. So I think we're going to be replacing those weekly. But I like the concept of the fact that it will actually slow traffic somewhat if we were able to put that in.
That's if VDOT does it.
Exactly, agreed. But I will go back to Mr. Leming. It's like, we're at a budget crunch, and it depends on the money we can get for it. I think is the important part here.
Do you know how many people come to Gloucester Point from York County to now participate in that body burn, and also the movie theater, which the movie theater is much less expensive than some of the movie theaters across the river?
If I had a software that we used to use, I could tell you.
Yeah.
You could probably ask the owners.
Yeah.
They could have an idea.
Yeah, it just, I can tell you, the main thing I was prepared to say is that over 30,000 people are coming across that bridge, and if we ever were going to teach people about the Middle Peninsula, giving them a sign every day to read 30,000 people, they might actually learn it.
Mr. Nicosia.
Put a spin on Dr. Orth. I worked down at the movie theater 5 years. The gentleman that runs that theater is a good friend of mine, and I worked for him for 5 years. And I can assure you that there is, candidly, 40% of his business does not live in Gloucester County. And one of the reasons why I know that is because exactly what you said. Significantly cheaper to ride over the bridge to go to YRC than it is to go to the movie theater over the river. Also, keep in mind that Gloucester Point, to Mr. Hutson talking about coming over the bridge, there was a large number of individuals who come from Whitestone and that area to come to our movie theater. And not only that, but that group of individuals, when they came, and it was a fairly large group and they came regularly, they stopped at the Walmart, they ate at Olivia's, they went other places in the county. So when that group came, they came probably twice a month, 3 times a month sometimes, depending on what we were showing. So they were not, not only taking care, contributing to the movie theater, but also contributing to other places in the county. So I would easily say that 40% of what they do at YRC is out of the county.
Ms. Rizzio, since you're on transportation mainly, or partially, could you get with Mr. McKnight and get an idea on how many people are coming across the bridge now, do a traffic count, now that the tolls are down?
We did ask for that based on the board's request, and they gave us 3 dates for June where it was counted, and they will not, he had asked, and they will not do it until they wanted a year. And so they're not going to do another count for us. The June dates, I compared them to the average of what we were doing, and it was like 2,000 cars more a day. It was like 30 to 32. But June, it's not fair to look at that, and because of the seasonality of traffic. So I think they wanted to wait until a year afterwards to do it, so.
Yes, Ms. Hanson.
One, and don't want to be remiss, and I know a lot of people in the community have voiced that, we have bigger fish to fry when it comes to things in the county. And I can't disagree. But free money's good. It would be nice to see if we could get donors, people that are willing to invest like we have in the courthouse, to help contribute to that as well. People that actually care about what their community gateway looks like. So, I wouldn't necessarily stop pursuing those options as well, because a lot of people down in Gloucester Point feel the same way I do. When you come across that bridge, it's tattoo parlors and tire stores. So, I think it's also important too that, if this is important to our board, call Mr. Hutson, call anyone else and let them know, not just from Carol's end, but we support that too. Pushing that agenda a little bit more as well and letting them know that it's important. I think it's important, just like any doorway when you walk into your home, if it's rotten and has, falling in, it makes you feel kind of like you're not at home. I think it's important to look good. I was speaking to a gentleman who was at the Oktoberfest over there. He was a photographer in York County, and I was talking about, Gloucester and how much I love my community and, the growth, and he says, look across the bridge. What's bringing anybody here? And this is a photographer. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, look across the bridge. So, it has to be impactful, whatever decisions have to make. I mean, everybody remembers when they did the stamped pavement, And at the very least, too, maintenance, like grass cutting, things like that. At the very minimum, we should have something done. It shouldn't look like it does as it is right now. The sidewalks, the cracking infrastructures on the sidewalks. I mean, at the bare minimum, we could at least try to figure that out. You build it and they will come, and it's just going to have to probably be little projects. It can't be the big things all at once. But I think it's important to maybe at least start moving in that direction, especially like you said, given 2031, we're going to be a little bit of a focal point. So definitely do everything we can do to get that money. I'm certainly willing to call Keith and say, hey, look, I support this. So.
Dr. Leming.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Mr. McKnight as the liaison from the board to VDOT. In a different life, our board would draft resolutions to the Commonwealth Transportation Board for specific things. And I heard Mr. Hutson make the comment there's got to be some traffic calming at the base of the bridge. And I don't know that, I'm asking the question whether or not a board resolution, something to that effect, which went to Mr. McKnight and to, maybe not to make anybody feel badly, to keep everybody in the loop, would be relevant. And sometimes the things that get heard at the Commonwealth Transportation Board, if they go both ways, it comes down from the board and it's coming up from below, sometimes that's a good thing. I don't think it would be harmful for the board to have some, it's your kind of district, you say what you want, man.
Unfortunately, I don't think this is a district issue. I think this is county, because you've got everybody coming into the county that comes through Gloucester Point. I think for the citizens, I mean, I would say more than likely the car that was tore up there at Dunkin' Donuts did not live at Gloucester Point. It was somebody going further north. So I agree with you that we need to probably, I'm sure Mr. Miller's not going to be there much longer.
Their appointment's already been made,
Okay.
a
So-
change. I know Ann knows the new secretary, and I don't know if the new directors, I mean, I think everything is changing.
But yes, if we send it up and send it through Mr. McKnight, I think that's a great idea. And I think we ought to go ahead and do that.
I'm happy to work with Ms. Cronin and prepare a letter for the chair to sign.
Yes, let's do that. But I think it's more than just Gloucester Point. I think this is a county-wide issue for that traffic calming, and I think that this is the whole county is going to benefit from this one way or the other. And I'm so glad that Mr. Bonniville feels that this is a bedroom community, because I've only been pushing this for 14 years and nobody understood what a bedroom community was for a good portion of that. So I'm glad to hear somebody else say that.
Yes, Dr. Orth.
I think Ms. Hanson made a really good point about, a place that if it's run down, it looks horrible, you feel bad about it. We've gone across that bridge so many times. Sometimes it's pretty ugly, but if you improve it, and make it look attractive, it might improve the attitude of people as they come across the bridge, and maybe not speed, down the line, but just making something, with, some sort of artwork, whatever, could really be helpful. I mean, go to airports, go to places now that are adding art and music and all that. When you go to an airport now, you've got all kinds of artwork and, all that
It's
stuff.
never been more expensive to fly.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you what it cost me to go to Australia in '81 versus recently, and it's cheaper now than it was ever.
Sure.
I would, with that comment, I say I'll probably irritate a whole lot of citizens, but I have stated to the board, I would love for the board to consider ordinance changes to prohibit the sale of fireworks and the tents and things, because that's what people see. I know people love and they come here for it, but it does not help with our attractiveness. So that may be just one person's opinion.
Dr. Orth, most of the time when I come across the bridge, I have music playing. So we don't have to worry about that.
Okay, so are we done with this? Okay, we've paved the road to heaven a couple times now. Next, we will move to the comprehensive plan update, timeline, and plan of action. Ms. Rizzio again. And then after that, we'll take a little recess before Ms. Steele gets started.
Yeah. So tonight I'm here to update you on our comp planning process, our plan of action, and our timeline. And I know it says December 11th Planning Commission. This is pretty much the same presentation that we did to them. A few tweaks. You can go ahead. Next slide. Okay, so branding the plan. So public engagement, as we've talked about over the past year, as part of this plan is very important, because this plan is really a long-range vision for the community and how we get there. So what is our vision and how do we get there? And involving the public in what that is a very important aspect of doing this plan. So past planning efforts, every comp plan we do, we try to engage the public in that. And we have town halls, and we usually have them, one in the north, one in the middle, one in the south, and we have a steering committee, and you may get 8 20 people at the public meeting. So it's kind of low attendance. We send out surveys, but when you ask somebody a survey question, they can just respond to the survey, but there's no context. You can't have a dialogue with them about what they answered. So it's kind of limiting in having true dialogue to get true, I believe, good solutions to some of the challenges and identification of what all are our opportunities, and our community players that are already doing these things can come in and we can be a better team on working together. So this is just a draft of the branding, because we want the community to get engaged, and we want them to be excited about it, and we want them to feel like it's their plan. So this is kind of building off of the 275th is our starting our planning horizon. The 400th birthday is like you look 25 years to the future. So on our 400th birthday, it will be, that's what we're planning for, that horizon. So I'll just read one statement. The comprehensive plan looks ahead to 2051, inviting today's community to help guide Gloucester into its 5th century, protecting what we value while preparing for what's next. So it's not set in stone, but just a draft of where we are. Okay. So why engage the public? Okay, for the result. I'm a big believer in when you bring multiple people to the table with multiple viewpoints, you usually find common ground and you come up with solutions. And staff can't do that on their own. With the board and with the steering committee, I believe the more people involved, the better it is. So the way we see this working, the board has given us some funds to hire consultants. We see hiring the consultants for two things. One, for that stakeholder engagement to help us with facilitation and to have an unbiased person leading these groups. And also for economic development analysis for the community. Like if economic development's important, have a consultant come in to help us understand where are our, what assets can we use, what is our economic development strategy. So those are the two things we see using a consultant for. Staff will do all the things on the left. We can update the data, the analysis, we can look at trends, and we can use all that information as a solid foundation when we go out to the public, so they have some knowledge base of where we've been, where we are, what the trends look like, and then they can, with an educated mindset of what's actually happening, help us with how much more do we want to grow, where do we want to grow, where don't we want to grow, what assets do we want to protect. And then if all that works out, great. The results is you have a unified vision, because I think I've heard, Gloucester's kind of bipolar. You got people who want growth, people who don't want growth. So kind of what are the common ground? How can we find it, and what can we build off of that? Because not everybody's going to agree on everything, but what can we agree on? Maybe more managed growth, better resource management, stronger local economy, resilience to challenges, and direction for future investments. Okay. So key policy discussions. There are a lot of them, and the next slide kind of just highlights them all. You probably can't read them, I'll read them. What resources do we have, and how can we leverage them for economic development? What recreation needs are not being met, and do we have the capacity to meet them? What strategies can we incorporate to prepare for and combat projected sea level rise and recurrent flooding? Does the current housing stock meet the needs of its residents? How much more growth do we want, or where do we want to encourage or limit growth? How can we support and preserve our remaining agriculture, forestry, and working waterfront lands? And what aspects of the community define our rural character, and how can we preserve that character? So again, all those are questions that we definitely want to engage the community in, and there's probably others, but those are kind of the big ones that we want to discuss with the community, okay? So our specific public and stakeholder engagement plan, how we see it working. And so I'm going to talk about this in layers. So that bottom layer where you see staff and consultants. Staff and consultant is going to kind of provide the foundation, the common working ground for where we are now, all the data and analysis. And then building on that, you have the steering committee in the center, which is the PC plus 5 volunteers that will guide the plan's development. Going up to the board, so the planning commission is charged with pulling together the comp plan. The board, of course, is the one who adopts the final plan in the end. We're proposing to get that public engagement, and this is the main thing that public engagement consultant would do, is have 6 focus groups in these general topic areas: economic development, land use, community services, history, arts, culture, environmental sustainability, and infrastructure and transportation. And I have, in the packet, there was a list of the groups, or current citizen groups and others that would be involved in those focus groups, so we can have that dialogue. So it's a back and forth. So the consultant would be handling those to talk about those specific areas, but each group we see, because community identity and growth should be thread and should be the foundation for those broader discussions. So we kind of see that being the first topic, coming up with some vision around those things, and then building on that with the more detailed topics. I think that's it on that slide. So the schedule. I know, we first started presenting, it's going to take 4 or 5 years to get through this. It might. I hope it won't. I really hope it won't. I'm more excited about this than I was a zoning ordinance update. This should be more fun. So we have, for organization and preparation, which is what staff has been doing since September, is looking at the current plan, updating some background data and maps. We haven't gotten as far as we'd like to with that, but we're making progress. We've establishing focus groups. We have an idea. If you guys are in agreement with this, our next step would be actually calling people and filling those slots. Developing a project website and mailing. We talked to our IT. They could develop the website for us. We thought about doing a mailing to every citizen in the county, because when we did the zoning ordinance update, we had it in the Beehive. We had public notices in the paper. We tried to tell everybody that called, and until we did that mailing that nobody understood, nobody knew what was going on. So our idea is that in the beginning we would send out a postcard that would have a QR code. Somebody could put it on their fridge if they were interested to stay engaged, and that would always send them back to that QR code. So everybody knows. They can't say they didn't know, and if they want to get engaged, they'll know where to go to know how to get engaged. And then draft the RFP for consultant services, which I have begun. We have a pretty good draft, and we've talked to our purchasing about it. So next, after that's done, so the end of this month, or I guess beginning of February through April, we'll be doing analysis on all the things that's in the comp plan that's we're updating. Land use trends, development trends, population, housing, the economic gap analysis. Like, we've had studies done in the past, pulling those out as resources for the future. Natural and cultural resources analysis, so staff pulling all that stuff together in preparation for the public and stakeholder engagement phase, which you can click, which is a little over a year. It's about 1 year and 3 months planned out in 3 phases. So first, listening to the public, just being a sounding board. What strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, just kind of inviting them in and listening on that broad community identity and growth. And then within each of those focus group, the economic development, the land use, kind of getting everybody's ideas and thoughts, and then summarizing that, and then going back, okay, this is, being you've said all this, what vision? What's our vision for the future? And then wrapping that up, and then going back again, and if this is our vision, what is our implementation strategy? Because a good comp plan has got next steps in it. It's not just a plan that gets put on the future, it's where do we go from here? So, and to support the focus, there will be focus group discussions, but also town halls with y'all. I know the public always comes out to those town halls, loves to have the face-to-face with you all about important topics. So maybe in each of those phases, the visioning, listening, and implementation would be a town hall where the public could come out. We've also talked about doing pop-up office hours and attendance at community events to talk to the public about the comp plan update and what their thoughts are. So that would take us through the August 27, and then after that, our plan is to draft it as we go along. I'm working on an outline right now. It's going to be a little different from our current one, so that when we get to the end, it's not, oh my gosh, we got to write the whole thing. So we draft it as we go along, and then the state agencies do have to review it, and there's a 90-day review period, so that takes us to February 28. Okay, so next steps. As I said, focus group organization, identifying those individuals and asking them if they're willing to serve. Continue to engage department heads. I met with Sherry today about her thoughts on the plan and where we were going. Gather and review relevant reports and studies. Finalize and issue the RFP for consultant services. Continue updating those existing conditions and maps, and then publicize the plan and opportunities for input. And that's it. Take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Rizzio? Dr. Leming?
sort of acknowledging that there are some major groups within the county who some people would maybe characterize as the fiber backbone of the county, and I would sort of just off the top of my head say Kiwanis, maybe Ruritans, and the churches, just off the top. That's not the only groups, by the way, but just those are the three that just come to my mind at the moment. Is there a specific engagement to reach to those people who are already really involved in the
Yeah,
community?
they are on the list in the focus group, I believe, for the community service one, because that's kind of their
Okay.
Wag. So yeah, we've tried to, and I mean, Ms. Steele went through the list, public engagement went through the list. So it is that, to get those foundational people that are already working in this community for the community's better and pull them in to this plan.
And I know that in the past, Ms. Steele's done it several times, our other administrators at several times have gone. I know Ms. Steele's gone to the Rotary, I know she's gone to the Ruritan Club at different times to speak when we're doing stuff like this to gauge their input.
And how about the food banks? I mean, that's a really rich group of people.
Food banks.
I apologize, the food banks. Committed, rich group of people who just see things through a different lens.
I know we had like the housing groups, but I don't think we did have them on there, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Most of the food banks are through churches, but there is one called Bread for Life. They're independent. They're the one that I volunteer for.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Yeah,
Add them to
and
the
I'd
list.
just like to point out, I wish we could fast forward this. Like, I wish we could be done tomorrow with this. So that it would give us that vision that we've been looking for. And I think I would really like to encourage, and how we ever need to do that, like for everybody to hit that QR code and to give your input. It makes our job easier when making these decisions. As, you know, I hear from 400 or 500 people over the span of 6 months, but what is that in reality to what the whole group is? You know, like you said, nobody wants growth, but nobody wants their taxes to go up. So you got to find that happy median. And it would really behoove us if we could get people to actually get engaged in this. So,
Mr. Hutson?
You know, the irony of that is when that was presented to the planning commission, they wanted to just pass the, because what does it say, Ms. Ducey-Ortiz, that you just has to be reviewed every 5 years. So they said, okay, we reviewed it, leave it as it is. And that is far from where it needs to be. But that was what was said.
that's crazy.
Dr. Leming?
Where does K-12 planning fall in this comp plan?
So schools will definitely be involved you mean as far as like capacity and stuff like that?
It's supposed to be the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're involved. Schools, there's a focus group on schools.
There's a focus group on schools,
Yeah,
okay. All right.
education. Oh, yes. So Sean, who's a planner, was a volleyball coach for the high school. And he's been very actively and engaging, and I think Ms. Steele talked to the superintendent of the schools to involve the high school specifically, and maybe the economic development class or a planning class, or something that we can tie in and ask them for help, maybe to do a survey specifically to get the youth engagement, high school youth engagement in the plan.
And I thought you were going to say that. I did speak with the superintendent, and they have finished their capacity study. They'll be presenting that to the school board this Thursday night. And he kind of showed what he's got, and he is willing to come to the planning commission meeting, and just need to send him an official invite.
So I just had two more else. I'll be quiet because I don't want this to drag on forever. In my locality where I lived before, the local education association, and that was insert the name of the county followed by the letter education association. Here it would be the Gloucester County Education Association, which is all the teachers in the county. Used to have an organization fairly active. That would be another wonderful group. And finally, I have this last crazy comment. I can't find the article, Carol, and I apologize. I've gone back and looked for it. But I saw an article where somebody had used an electronic survey to send out to all of their citizens, and they used an artificial intelligence bot to go through the responses to A, determine if they were statistically significant, step one, and B, try to give people a guide of what that shared vision really was. I can't find
I
the
have it.
article.
You had sent it, and I got a copy on it. So we did look that up, and we did talk to IT about that. They're not, he was gonna look into what exactly that was, but I think AI will, you used to not wanna do an open-ended question on a survey because, oh my gosh, then you gotta figure out what everybody's saying. But with AI, I think there's opportunity to really use that to.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Looking forward to every step along the way.
Yeah, thank you.
With that, Ms. Steele has the next presentation. Would the board like to take a couple-minute recess, stretch your legs before we dive into this, or you want to keep going?
Carol's only gonna be like 5 minutes, right?
Well, I've asked Ted to run the timer, but she said she doesn't need it. But if y'all want to keep going, we can just keep going. Okay.
Let's go.
All right, let's go. Ms. Steele, would you like to stay there?
I was gonna say, is it okay if I stay here in that way, Trish, especially with helping with not having a clicker tonight?
45 minutes.
No, it's not that long. She's already told me she's not going to take the full 45.
We don't have enough money to spend to talk for 45 minutes.
Fair enough.
So it is that time of year, yay, and starting really getting into our budget and to present to you the draft plan of the capital improvement plan for the county. Next. The things that we're going to go over very quickly will be the objectives, the process, the 5 years worth of request, specifically addressing next year's request, how we did the scoring, our recommendations, what's not funded, and what the next steps are. Our objectives are to identify were to identify the capital improvement projects for the next 5 years, to document those needs, to align those with the Board of Supervisors' priorities and comp plan, which I think will get easier after we update the comp plan. Prioritize the needs, evaluate the funding options, balance with what the available funding we have, and for the board to eventually adopt a plan of action and appropriate the funding, and then we will execute it. In our process, as usual, we ask the department heads to submit requests, and they determine the pricing with their own resources, as well as working with the county engineering department and outside contractors to get quotes and things. The submissions were made available online. Many years ago, we used to give out big, thick CIP books where you got a copy of every single submission. Those tree killing days are over with. Every single thing that you're going to see of the 34 items that were requested are all on the finance page under capital improvements, FY26. You can go right to the submissions and read about them as FY27, thank you, the submissions and the backup materials too. So the budget team and the Planning Commission reviewed and scored the projects as well as the department heads, and then working very closely with Maria, I've looked at the scoring and have recommendations for you tonight. I've added in the slide to highlight for the public. You all know this, but really, if somebody looks at this document and goes, well, where's utilities? And utilities is not in the CIP presentation. We stopped doing that, and instead, we bring the whole utilities budget, both operating and capital, together at once in March, because utilities is an enterprise system, and they're looking at balancing those needs, capital and operating, with the revenue that they generate. If the utilities department requests general fund support, if that does happen, then that will be addressed in the March board packet and for the board to consider. The next page, don't be expecting to read it, because we're going to go through the summary, and again, this information is all detailed online. But there, in fact, we can go ahead and flip. You can just see there's 5 years of requests. But for easier font size, there are 34 requests totaling up to $116 million plus. 91.8 million are debt finance projects versus pay-go. And the definitions of what that means: debt finance is generally, it's going to exceed $1 million in cost and have a useful life of greater than 10 years. And pay-go means we're paying cash for it within that year. Lease agreements are also in the debt finance category. If you look at the 91.8 million versus the 24 million of pay-go over the next 5, I will note that the one large request that's been in the budget and sort of been pushed off year after year for a community center is more than half of that $91 million. The FY27 total request, there were $22 million plus dollars, and I appreciate Maria putting in the pie chart so you can kind of see how things add up. And the schools may look rather large in their green Pac-Man, but that is, remember, that is both debt financed and PAYGO projects. And because there's 23 of them, it's kind of hard to understand, so I broke them down into 3 categories. And those 3 categories are, first of all, the things that were already asked for in FY26 and went unfunded. So they're back at it again. Those needs did not disappear. Then we have new projects. In an ideal world, you would never have a new project come in as year 1. We don't live in an ideal world. We find out about things. People, it happens. And so we have a number of items that are coming in as their first appearance in FY27. And then the third one is, as the 5-year plan, and we were moving, so FY26 drops off, those projects that were FY27 have moved up. And you can see the amount of the projects of those 3 categories. So going on to the first one with $8.3 million, the majority of that being debt financed. So I'm going to slow down a little bit now to really get into the projects, and then each of the ones that are recommended have a better description. Out of the projects that were asked for last year that were not unfunded, we have the Hutson House demolition, Building 2, where admin is the window replacement, because we have single pane windows in there. Athletic field lighting, and that holdover is for the Arc Park multi-court where the pickleball basketball is, for the lighting of that. The park playground equipment that is held over is for Beaver Dam on the main entrance. The school marquee signs, the school casework replacement, and the Gloucester High School athletic complex. So 7 projects were asked for last year that didn't get funded. The next category are the ones that were mentioned that are the new projects with over $1 million, and they're all in the PAYGO category. The first one is the O2 Courthouse has a problem with the handicap accessible ramp and the steps and some pulling away and repair issues that need to be made. We have just recently done some repairs, but this is different from that. So if you saw the mason out there working, this is different. Also, the HVAC units, there are replacing the energy recovery units that are on the roof is a new request to keep them going. The election equipment upgrade, which again I'll explain in a moment. Gym floor refinishing, virtual server replacement, athletic field renovation, which while it's a new project, it's moved in years. So we did the renovation previously for Woodville. This is different than what was done. And then the body tot fire system replacement, which I think we've talked about with the school system. And the third category are again the things that naturally it was their turn in FY27, and the heavier amount of that, sort of 2/3 approximately, is the debt financed. So we have PR&T ADA improvements, and for new board members, this is something that's sort of been an ongoing thing that we're constantly trying to correct, where facilities have been built that were not, that do not have accessibility. And then school bus replacement program, the Gloucester Point Beach, which we'll talk about, is the Land and Water Conservation Grant Program, the T.C. Walker Education Center, the soffit and brickwork, soffit replacement and brickwork that needs to be done, the County Paving Program, which is an ongoing every year. So it's not only in 27, it's in 28, 29, et cetera. Historic preservation, which is This right now focus on these buildings, but historic preservation could also be Gloucester Point. Beaver Dam Dock, Bridge, and shoreline repairs, which is a continuation. In other words, again, that was just like paving. It was last year and it's this coming year. It's this year and next year. The body tot renovation, and that's for the 1973 wing, and the roof replacement, which the next project being the county jail. One thing that I left off the list that when I get to the end and I'm asking for particular feedback is the Gloucester Point Library. At one point, a couple years ago, we talked about potentially buying in or working a partnership with a project that was going to be in the area, in the Hayes area, that would allow the county to develop and own the library versus continue to rent. And so we were basing that project on when was the lease going to expire. Well, we said at that time the land should have been bought last year or 27 if we're going to do it and have time to build it before the lease is up. So when I get to the end, I'm going to ask you about that. It is not included as a cost because we didn't have land. We just had to be determined. No price tag on the land purchase. How did, what happened?
I just hit.
Oh, okay. So we're to project scoring, yeah. Okay, there we go. So the Planning Commission was asked to only score the FY27 new projects. When I asked them, did they want to rescore projects that they had seen before because maybe they'd have a different opinion on them and stuff, they said no. Next year we will not offer them that opportunity because projects don't need to keep the same score as 5 years ago. It's time for them to look at those again. But we pulled previous scores and put them in. As you can see, there's a definition of what the need is, what the impact is, and with 1 being the lowest score, then the projects receive a scoring between 2 and 10, and we averaged all of the 3 categories. So that would be the department head score, the Planning Commission score, and the budget team score. If you flip to the next page, you'll see how things settled out. And with the highest project receiving a 9.7 and the lowest a 5.7, and again, that's the $22 million in request, both PAYGO and debt finance projects for 27. And if you look kind of where the green goes, and this is going to be what we recommended for funding, it goes down to the $250,000 for historic building preservation or historic preservation, with an additional item that is the election equipment down there at 6.5. So that's the only thing where I put in something that was not in the order that they came out as the scoring. So what are the recommendations? Again, going with what the averages and not changing anything other than the election equipment, you'll see that in order to make things balance out to what would work with fund balance, sort of getting ahead, if you look down at county paving program, they asked for $888,000 and the recommendation is only $205,000. The school bus asked for 1.4, and that's a reduction to 1.2. And then this also adds back in the inflationary expenses because we often find that these things are costing more than we thought they would because of the time delay. You know, maybe even if the budget is adopted in July, we might not be getting to that project until January or the spring or something, and the costs are going up. All right, so now looking at the recommended projects in a little bit more detail. So the fire suppression system, this is, life safety. That's why everybody scored it high, and it includes the assessment, the design, and the installation of everything that's needed there at Body Tot to update their system. The bus replacement program, and I have already told the superintendent that this was my recommendation. They had asked for a total of 8 buses, and I knocked it down to 7 with removing one of the 6 larger passenger buses, which is like 177,000. And that need, and when you look back to the 5-year thing, you'll see it's like 1.4, 1.5 every year. Did you want to ask a
I
question?
do want to ask a question here. No, but I'm waiting for you to finish the bus replacement, so you finish and I'll ask a question.
That's it.
Okay.
Good.
I know you have here and it says many existing buses exceed 200,000 miles and or are more than 15 years old. Can we get a firm number on that number of buses that are over 200,000 miles or that are 15 years old, and how many are still used daily of those buses?
And the thing that we'll need to add is whether they're used daily or not, because they provided all the info on that.
Correct.
But
It would be nice to
some
know
of them that are so old and have low mileage probably gets to the point of what you're thinking is that bus needed daily? And they do have some that weren't used as much. Now, I think they try to rotate them through.
Sure.
But
It would be nice to have those
we
numbers
will-
firmed up.
get that additional information.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's really, it speaks to fleet management. I mean, I don't mean to be silly, but it just drove me crazy that, you know, one year we'd need 2 school buses, and the next year we'd need 7 school buses, and the next year we'd need 6 school buses, and then we'd need 1 school bus. You know, there has to be an overall fleet management plan.
They have a
I mean,
plan, I still have a hard time accepting the figure and knowing that we don't have, I just kind of said to the superintendent, this is just not sustainable. This is like all the money we have just going to school buses. And how do we figure out some other way? But I can tell you, Ms. Decker has presented to the board before. She has a complete system, and they are looking at trying to do 20% replacement until they catch up. There were many years that they weren't funded.
Right.
And so they have a lot of old buses, and they switched over to the 77 passenger because they could get more people on. Instead of having 2 buses, have 1 bus. She's really worked on it. But it still seems like there's got to be another way to lower those expenses. We talked briefly about leasing. That doesn't seem to be it. But it's a large chunk of our pay go.
Correct.
but isn't this the same fleet management conversation that goes to the sheriff's department?
Well, there's a different situation with school buses. They've got a whole mapping system, and they know all the kids and,
I know
all that kind of thing.
I understand that. I was just talking about
But the fleet management
is what I'm
is
talking about.
similar, that we replace so many, and they're done through our FMRR account versus our capital improvement. So they're on the operating side. But yes, the sheriff's department is trying to keep, so we don't have up and down. It's a little bit more manageable number there.
Mr. Chairman? Well, that's what I'm slowly driving at is, should the school bus replacement program be in the capital improvements project at all? Bear with me for a quick second. So if in fact they have a credible, and I'm just going to assume they do, just for the moment. If in fact they have a credible ongoing fleet maintenance program, then really and truly, the only question is how long is that cycle? Is
Right.
that cycle 2 years, 10 years, 15? I see the 15-year recommendation. My personal experience has been that diesel buses with automatic transmissions probably aren't very good and reliable after 400,000 miles, but that's just me. I'm not a school bus driver. But if they have a fleet management program, I don't really know why that consistent number needs to be in the capital improvements project. It really ought to be over on the operating budget side.
Years ago.
That's just me.
So years ago, 3 of the board members sitting up here set aside some tax revenue back when school buses were $110,000 apiece. I think we made it 2 years?
I think it was 1.
Maybe 1 year before we realized we couldn't do that anymore because the buses were too expensive and that money we set aside wasn't going to work. And I think then it sort of hung out to dry for a couple of years, and now it's come back as in the CIP. Is that where it needs to be? Maybe, maybe not, but this is where we currently have it, so that's a discussion for budget time that we can discuss. I'm sure the schools would be happy to move it somewhere else, but at the end of the day, it was $110,000 a bus in 2012.
Yeah. And if we're taking the same funds out of operating, it's still a a strain on our budget. So, but I do remember there's been conversations in the past of which side it belongs on, and I'll leave that up to Maria to answer and Ms. Callaway to answer that. Okay, then the next project is the 1973 wing. And one of the things that we realized later this afternoon is that we had, I don't want to say missed, it was some miscommunication of whether the HVAC was a repeat. And so this figure 6.9, you're going to see this updated to go up to include the HVAC, because they need another HVAC unit at Body Tot. It's in this, it should just come as part of that project versus being on the HVAC line. So I apologize, but that figure will go up by the next time you see it. Okay, the virtual server, this is one of the things that is, very concerning of making sure that we are able to operate like we need to, and that we have systems that go out of support and things. So hopefully this will reduce some of our licensing costs, but this is a big one and scored high as well. The election equipment, I put it in, I think, if the board is trying to reduce or wants to sub in something else, we could wait a year. But the idea was to have the registrar's office replace the poll books and the ballot scanners in a non-presidential election year, so they could get that over with. And it also fits into their 5- and 10-year replacement cycle. So the poll books were done in 2022, the ballot scanners were done in 2017. This is the recommended time to replace, and so that's why we bumped it up in the priorities. Okay? The paving, we are not going to, because we cut the FY26 paving budget, we're not going to get to everything that was on the FY26 paving list. And so what we're proposing is to hold over any leftover funds that we have. And right now, the next project is the Whitcomb Lodge paving parking lot. And if there's any funding left with what we have in the budget in FY26, to hold that over and add it to this partial funding to do the Ferries Mill, which was an FY26 project. We're supposed to be moving on, but we're just falling a little bit behind, but that's the picture of the Ferries Mill gravel lot. Okay? And then the next one is the Gloucester Point Beach renovation. This is the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant that we've told you that we've received the tentative woohoo good news from the state. It still has to go through the federal level. We had stated, and the board said they wanted to see it again before the appropriation, is made. So either that can be done through the budget adoption process or separately. But our next deadline to turn our information in is the 1st of April, and we would expect to be hearing the final word from the federal government sometime between July and October. The funding for Land and Water Conservation Fund is separate from the federal budget. It doesn't have anything to do with their cycle of the October 1. It has, and they don't have to have any of that. So as soon as they're ready to award, they will award. And then historic building preservation. This is how we have been spending the reserve of our tourism fund, our lodging tax funds, and we have a couple other little small sources, and what comes together from tourism revenue. We have been able to do a number of projects over the years of completely redoing buildings and creating tourist attractions, as well as those signs that I mentioned. But we are into much higher dollar figures than we used to be. You heard the $7 million plus long-term plan. With what we're looking at doing next year, those two projects are more than the $250,000 that we're recommending from the fund, but we would be carrying forward. We would be starting on the courthouse in this fiscal year and then carrying forward money, finishing up the courthouse and looking at these two new projects. That is going to, without generating additional excess revenue and how we could possibly grow that account again, we're going to be down to about $26,000 left in that reserve account. So we've made very good use of it, but that's why we need to generate more tourism dollars, more people to stay in our hotels and things. All right, so the proposed funding sources are shown here. The $700,000 approximately is 1/2 of the beach cost. The debt issuance, that 6.9 is going to go up, but we would be looking at that because that doesn't include the borrowing costs and all those things that we would be coming back to you with as well. The tourism fund balance I just explained. And then the unassigned fund balance, which does include the contingency for the 27 projects, and that totals up to 10.8. And if you flip over, again, just a little bit further breakdown on what we think, 20-year funding and a 5% rate, which hopefully will get better. So maybe that'll make up for some of the HVAC expenses, but just kind of looking at things. But Ms. Callaway has a good plan that we've been working on, and we'll have more information coming back to you when she does her February report of how we can replenish some of our school sales tax fund and help to pay for this project. And it will also require potentially future debt retirement, which means beyond what we're counting on for the fire department's debt retirement. Okay, and then this is the...
Just
Yes.
one brief question. Is this construct bank funding?
It is bank funding through, it could be, we've done...
We would choose.
Yeah, we would go through that process, and the last time, I think they chose to do the banks for HVAC. We do the same kind of thing of an RFP,
Yeah.
but they are not general obligation bonds. It's being paid for with the sales tax.
It would be either, we would do an RFP, and it would either be a bank loan or, like Ms. Steele said, the most recent HVAC was funded through an equipment lease, which was a great option. If we're bond rated, it could potentially go out for public issuance at that point. So I think it would depend.
That's actually when I was sort of barking up the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I'm going to be really stupid. A virtual server for $150,000. Now, I'm not an IT guy, but you're talking about cloud services.
Right.
So the content is not held in a mechanical
We don't have the
server here.
But
You're
I'm
buying.
gonna let Maria explain, since she's helping out with IT right now. and can better
Yeah,
handle
this is
that.
like the environment, and I'm not an IT girl either. So I can certainly get more detailed, but this has to do with the licensing and some of the hardware. So this is not like the whole entire county's server room that's down,
No, I didn't think it was.
No, this is the environment in which it hosts. You're right, cloud a little bit, but I certainly don't want to upset any of my senior analysts who are
basically
potentially watching this. But
Right, it's basically licensing for whichever data center our information is
And
going to
some of
sit
the
on that we can go
hardware.
and get as needed.
And I need to go back and reread their submission too, because there's probably a little bit better explanation than what we're saying in there. The debt retirement sheet, this is the same thing that we've handed out before, which to try to clarify that Ms. Callaway added in not only the year of when the last debt payment is, but when would be the potential spending. The numbers are going to be a little bit different if you were to go and compare it to Davenport's information tonight, because Davenport separates where our first line item is the York County loan radio. We're talking about paying that off. They put that in a whole separate line. So it's not the same debt, but if you add them together, you get it. Plus, as you probably know, those payments change just a little bit on those last, so it's not an exact.
Can we get the number, not tonight, the number for the jail contribution?
Okay, all right. So in paying for our pay-go items, we have been using the fund balance. We do not have a special fund, and so this is what we've done, is what was greater than what our, the board's policy, that provided what we could do. Well, that was not enough money, even as, because I'm going to talk about what didn't get funded. So I am going ahead and recommending that you, with a 14 to 16% policy limit, that we would take it to 15% to fund the items that are recommended. It's symptomatic of where we are and needing additional funds to keep up with things. And the next one just shows a breakdown again on that of what the figures are and what would be left in the account. But it's still within your policy range. Usually this is something that you all would talk about during the budget process, and I wouldn't even go to. The one we're in right now, you went down to 15.3. We're not going to be able to get those things. Is that my yellow light on 45 minutes?
Yeah, but you had a lot of
30.
questions.
Okay. Almost done. So first of all, notice the highlighted colors. And the highlighted colors are direct infrastructure maintenance that we're not keeping up with. But it really goes beyond that, because you could look at ADA, that's maybe not maintenance, but county paving, the reason we didn't put that funding, that 683 that I cut out directly in maintenance, because we have some gravel lots that are going to be paved. It still could be considered maintenance, but I didn't want you to think it was like, sealing something that was already done. The athletic complex could be considered in some ways portions of that maintenance, because we have it and we're fixing it. But then the other things that were added that are completely new. The Hutson house, that could even be considered an infrastructure maintenance thing, but it's something that, it's there and it's not being utilized, so I left it out of that category. The marquee signs, the same thing. There's one new sign in there, and the rest of them are maintenance. So you could see, and the athletic field lighting is a new service. But you can see the theme here is we're not funding our infrastructure maintenance items. So there are things on here that are going to have consequences for not funding them that the board may want to consider coming up with additional funds or reprioritizing. This is again where feedback is going to be important, and also from the community when we have the public hearing on this. In my discussions with the superintendent, I think that they're going to want to talk about the gym floors and the marquee. The marquees, they're, even if there's a set figure, they may come back and say, hey, can we switch this around because we'll take this instead of that, because I think those items are important to them. We will be leaving part of the shoreline still eroding pretty desperately at Beaver Dam. The not doing the playground equipment at Beaver Dam, we've already had to take away most of the playground at Ark. We literally had to take away. We had to take away the playground as it fell apart at Gloucester Point Beach. We went from having a beautiful playground to no playground because we didn't have the maintenance money to replace it. So we're backing it up. That's not in there. The not replacing those energy recovery wheels, that's another risk that we take of what's going to break, and we definitely do not want to have court sessions without cool and heated buildings, but just trying to find the funds for these things, we just couldn't do it. The roof replacement, we had 7 work orders since last July for the jail. We have a leaking roof, and we're doing a little bit of maintenance to it now to try and help, but that $525,000 is to go to fund that leaking roof. And even it's a small amount that, whether 65 and you double it because you can do them all at once or cut it in 2. But the window replacements, I don't know how much money we would save, but it is something that we are all running portable heaters in our offices. I mean, it's so cold, the feeling coming through with the windows, and the building was built without double pane windows because of the age. I'm not aware of anything rotting that hasn't been addressed. I mean, we did have a mold issue, but that wasn't, it didn't even come in from that, but they did discover more and fix that. So, not to say it's depressing, but, you know, wish we'd all won that lottery. Okay, the next and final slide, a couple things besides the sort of logistic things that are on here as far as we know. The public hearing is next. The tour, let me mention that first, and then I want to ask some questions for y'all to be thinking or name some topics. The recommended, if we were going to go to the recommended sites on the tour, first of all, I would add in utilities as the tour, as part of the tour, because it just needs to be, you know, because y'all need to see that, that's different. But if we're talking about what's recommended, you're really looking at Body Tot and identifying the older part and Gloucester Point Beach. The courthouse, I think, you know, you're familiar, we just had that tour or that discussion. The Hutson house, if everybody wants to wear masks and stuff, we'll go in there and take a look at it if anybody's curious, or I can take you in at a different time. The Beaver Dam Playground, again, that may be a site that many of y'all go to periodically, but we could go there. The sports complex, I think that's more of a schematic, but still, if they want you to take you in and look at some of the levels and conditions of things. So in order to create that tour, I would like some feedback of what you'd like to see, in addition to, I think, again, the utilities. So my four asks, besides answering any questions that I can, is I would like for the board to consider the amount of funds that are recommended here and saying, is this what you're comfortable with? Secondly, are these the specific projects that you'd like to see? And third, are you comfortable with the funding source because of going down to 15%? I mean, I could be presenting this to a board who says we are not going below 16%. And then if that's what you all think, I got to do some changing in recommendations. And then fourth is the library. And we can obviously renew the library lease when the time comes. And we can look at, there's also been discussion before that if we might want to look at a different lease, put out an RFP, see what we could get that maybe would answer some of the needs that facility is currently not able to accommodate with group meetings and things like that. So we could put it off completely. Y'all could say, no, I think we can pay for itself by what we're paying in rent, and we should look at it. So I would like guidance on that as well. So that was fast. Okay.
I was remiss earlier. I know we all got an invitation to Body Tot for Friday, where they
Yes.
were named a Blue Ribbon School to 3 o'clock. And they get out of school at what, 3:30, 3:45? I should know.
So look then.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if everybody, who's planning on going? So, but that would give us an opportunity, I'm sure. But the problem is, I know, but I know that that wing would be in the morning session versus the after, because they're doing 2 assemblies.
Well, did it look like maybe only, Dr. Leming, you're going, Mr. Hutson, I'm going, was anybody else going?
I would like to attend, however, I have a bunch of equipment that's being delivered to me on Friday to try to get to people before it snows on Saturday. So depending on its arrival will determine my availability.
And we do also have a county employees retiring, and so I was thinking, I think
Well,
that's
then
one.
strike
That's
that.
a different date, never mind. Different date, that's
Well, I mean,
that's
if-
the waste management tour date.
If the bulk of us aren't going, it doesn't matter.
Right, okay. But it is nice that you brought that up, and I know we all are very proud of them.
Oh, yes, it's a big deal. Okay, comments on what Ms. Steele is asking. I don't think we have to necessarily finalize it tonight, but between now and the closing of that public hearing, it would probably be nice to have some better insight for Ms. Steele as she prepares and potentially dismantles what she just proposed to us.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Leming.
I want to have a couple of general comments. To AC plugged into the wall outlet, that's a life safety issue, right there.
So we have a plan. Every one of them is tested. They all have to have the knockover and turn off. And we went through a program on this back a number of years ago, and we have a safety officer. And so we're not allowed to just bring in any little one. They all have to meet the safety standards. So again, they shut off on their own, and if they knock over, they cut off. It's not
I'm probably more
smart.
worried about the wiring in the walls than I am about the heaters. I mean that sincerely. I'm just making a comment from a previous life, and I'm not a fire inspector, but I've looked at enough of these wiring systems that were built for one thing, and they're just not designed for that continuous load. And they heat up at the connections and they cause fires. That's my only concern about this item. That's a focused concern on this item. My second comment is, and I'm going to go back to my first comment about the school buses, a number of these items are really just unfunded depreciating items. They're really not capital items. Capital item has a different conversation to me. You're going to do something that we're not involved in. It's a new project and it requires a new expenditure. When you talk about gym floor refinishing, every gym floor has a finite life. And you want to tell me, I mean, I don't know what the guys tell me. My kitchen guy told me that when they did my floors, they were going to last 3 years. And so we're now at 5 years and we're down to bare wood. So that's stupid on me, to be quite frank with you. I knew that they were going to last 3 years, and I should have set aside money every year so at the end of 3 years I could just redo the floors instead of having to listen to concerns from my family about the bare wood. And you could walk through these. I mean, the playground park equipment, it has a life. I'm just being honest. Roof replacement and refurbishment, same conversation. Roofs have lives. I just sort of walk down, and it starts with the school bus, but it goes on with athletic. Now, if you want to talk about a real capital improvement, it would be the athletic field lighting that we don't currently have. That would be a new item that I would see as a legitimate capital expenditure. Now, mind you, it would also take the use of those fields just from the daytime to expand their use to the nighttime. So it's a dramatic expansion of use project. But I'm still on a rant, excuse me. So I was elected, as Nick said, to try to balance taxes against needs of the county. I mean, that's I heard you earlier say that. I appreciate your comment. And I don't think we're funding the needs of the county, is my point. And I actually, personally, resent these items being in a capital improvements project. You're stealing money from the capital improvements projects to fund from the operating, you're stealing money from what ought to be capital improvements projects to fund unfunded depreciation projects. And I just think that's structurally wrong. And I'd like to see some of these things go back over on the operating side, to be honest with you. And if that requires the tax increase, it requires a tax increase. And people, I'm sure I'll get every phone call in the county about that tomorrow. It's fine, I'll take the heat. But I think structurally, it's just wrong. Now, my last comment, and I will shut up on my last comment for the moment. Chris knows I went to Hampden-Sydney, so we learned how to talk at Hampden-Sydney. I'm concerned about dropping the fund balance because of the credit rating. Let me tell you, I've been there before, and that's one of the things those people are going to look at. If you have a policy and it's 14 to 16%, the question's going to be, are you adhering to that policy? And if you're not, if you deviate from your own policy, that lowers their confidence in your ability to follow through on your commitments. So I don't like dropping the fund balance personally. I Again,
Can I ask, just making sure, is it because of, I mean, it is in the policy still, but because you feel like it's not having the safety net that those
Yeah.
people would be looking for?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what I'm saying. So that's kind of my rant. I started off on the school buses. I think they ought to be on the operating side. I understand school buses are expensive. Educating students used to cost $6,000 a month, and now it costs, I don't know, $16,000 a year. I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
There's a resolution on page 220
correct.
to advertise this. So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? At the same time, please get your concerns, if anyone else has them, to Ms. Steele, and then we can iron this out, hopefully, at our February 3rd meeting. So, Mr. Hudson? So with that, Ms. Steele, would you poll the board?
Mr. Nicosia?
Yes.
Ms. Hanson? Yes. Mr. Bonniville? Yes. Dr. Orth? Dr. Leming? Mr. Hutson?
Yes.
Mr. Chriscoe?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. So we are now down to supervisor discussion, and I know Dr. Leming has a few things. Do you want to do those tonight, or you want to wait till the 3rd? I mean, I don't. It's 9:15. Okay. Mr. Nicosia, I want to ask you for a one-board discussion topic. Please explain your beautiful hairdo for this evening for everybody who's watching from home. For the folks up here with us that haven't been here in previous meetings, I think it's a good opportunity for you to explain why you do this, and it's a very cool idea.
All right, so 5 years ago, I've been in the school division 25 years. 5 years ago, when I went into the classroom, I challenged my first class. I teach economics and personal finance, and I challenged my first group, and I had A-day students and B-day students. So I had 150 kids a week, every other day. So, and that was all year. So I had 150 kids first semester and an additional 150. So I challenged them. I said, you need to pass this certification test, and what can I do? And there was a student that said, I bet you won't bet your hair. I said, I'd give you my hair. He said, if you give us your hair and let us do what we want to with it, we can guarantee you that we'll pass this test. I said, not gonna happen. And so lo and behold, the first year, 100% pass rate, and they came to me and said, you're gonna look real good in that mohawk. So, first year I got a mohawk, and then I've had cheetah print with kisses on top of my head, and I've had soccer balls, and I've had, if they could think. This time I stepped in because he wanted me to have a skullet, and I was like, I draw the line somewhere. So I went back I said, can I at least pick the hairstyle, you pick the color? So they said yes. So the reason why my hair looks crazy is because, and I think this can go a long way here, when you tell people you're going to do something, you need to do it. And especially teenagers. When you tell teenagers you're going to do something, you better do it. Because if you want to lose a generation of people, tell teenagers you're going to do something and back up on your word. So I challenge you all and myself. We told our constituents we were going to do something, whatever that something is. The only way we're going to get them to trust us is to stand on our word. So let my hair be an example. I promise you by the February meeting I will go back to normal. But I want to publicly say, on behalf of the Cosmetology Department of Gloucester County Public Schools, under the direction of the fabulous Michelle Seitz, a little teeny senior girl, or junior girl actually, she's not even senior yet, who will sit for her cosmetology license in May. So if you wanted, and I said, are we gonna dye this before the bell rings? She's like, Don't worry about it. This is my job. And she did a really good job. So, that's why my hair is pink.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll get to the other discussion topics at another meeting. There's no closed meeting. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.